Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Be There and Vibe podcast. I'm Kate Kennedy, your host. Welcome to 2025. I mean, we're closing out Q1 of the 2000s. What a thrill. If you're new here, I'm a Chicago-based podcaster / pop culture commentator, best-selling author of my book, One in a Millennial. Comes out in paperback in a couple weeks. Exciting. And one of the things we've done over the years is kind of these detailed multi-part deep dives when there's a pop culture story that comes out that has a lot of layers, a lot of intricacies. And while sometimes major pop culture stories like this have such saturation, I don't really feel like competing with the noise or like I can add value. Sometimes I feel like I can at least help you make sense of it. And I've spent days, hours reading through legal documents, so you don't have to. And today we're going to do a classic BTI 5 deep dive about the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, It Ends With Us saga that is now involved their PR people, crisis PR. This is one of the most complicated things that has come across my desk in years. That quite frankly intimidates me a little bit, but we're going to give it our best shot. I hope everybody had a happy new year. 2025 is off to a weird start, if I'm being honest. A couple things surprising me today. One, I am wearing a denim vest in my frigid basement. I am doing my laundry from being gone for like 2 weeks, but it's what I had available in my basement, and I needed to get started. And there are worse things than starting your year off like Lorelai Gilmore's first day at Chilton. The other thing I didn't see for myself this year is starting the year with It Ends With Us, that I thought that conversation ended with us in the summer being kind of fatigued by it being such a prominent part of the news cycle when we didn't really have a lot of answers. It was clear something was off, but we didn't know what. And meanwhile, a couple things were going on with Blake Lively. A lot of things resurfacing in terms of like past videos and cringy interviews. And also in real time, she was not giving the best interviews related to a movie about such a serious topic that I think people were hopeful would take the opportunity to have an impactful cultural conversation given the platform the movie had and the eyes that were on the campaign to talk about domestic violence, to share victims' experiences. I think people even thought maybe there could be an opportunity to correct for and contextualize and better educate and promote resources for people in that circumstance. I think there's been some criticism over time of how the story depicts domestic violence. And anyway, I was one of the people that saw the movie and hadn't read the book in full and was a bit blindsided by it. It's kind of crazy given like how chronically online I am and how much I had heard about this movie. I still didn't get through my skull, didn't get through my beanie that it was not like a rom-com, a romantic comedy, fun love triangle. Like I thought it was a love triangle. Anyways, whatever. I don't need to do that. But yeah, so this summer, that was a big topic of conversation. I thought this kind of faded into the distance. Then I was on the way to the airport to go to my parents' house for Christmas with my toddler on the way to a delayed flight. And this Blake Lively bombshell of a story gets dropped via the New York Times, which linked to her initial complaint she filed in California and detailed allegations of workplace misconduct, sexual harassment, and an allegedly retaliatory campaign for reporting such misconduct. And beyond that, like a methodically calculated takedown social media campaign that allegedly was orchestrated by Melissa Nathan, crisis PR manager, very well known for, her agency working with Johnny Depp on, his whole reputation management situation, included some pretty damning evidence that the goal was to quote unquote bury Blake. And yeah, I was hooked. I kind of feel bad because at first I was so swept away by the PR part of it all that I kind of neglected to realize like, oh, this is a really serious series of allegations about workplace harassment. That, frames the PR as the retaliatory piece. And I think that like the press and people like me were kind of like, more so sinking our teeth into the juice and being more kind of casual and flippant about it because that was the part that like stood out and revealed something that we really haven't had a lot of line of sight into, which is like the sinister PR world of reputation management that blind item dreams are made of. Like that to a point, it's so hard to get any sort of clarity or proof about these players that it just seems like folklore. And I've hired a PR firm. My experience was like, hey girl, Kelly Clarkson show's not interested. And I was like, all right. For the most people that hire PR, like it's to promote your projects, to carve out or maintain or preserve your image. And do some damage control within reason should something happen. But the type of PR designed to destroy another person and make it like untraceable is fucking crazy. And in August, when I found out Justin Baldoni was being like, heralded as this feminist icon, yet he had hired Johnny Depp's PR firm, I was like, absolutely not. Like, that is, if you are actually this like champion for survivors, like that is the dumbest thing you could be doing. And I'll explain to you why, but and now it all kind of makes sense. That's not to say I think he's entirely guilty. That's not to say I think Blake's guilty. I don't think anyone's like innocent or guilty. I think we have a really complicated, layered case. That's the thing, guys. Like, I'm not on a team. No, nobody knows. It's kind of an insane thing to claim that something in a complaint, in a lawsuit, because you can really kind of put anything in lawsuits, is like categorically false and somebody's obviously lying. Like, we do not know that. We do not know these people. And we should not bully each other on the internet for not having the same take as we do, as if it's some sort of moral failure and not being on the right side of history, when I think a lot of us are just sitting back and waiting to see what happens. Meanwhile, I watch my algorithms like completely switch sides like a record changer. I mean, my TikTok's Baldoni, my Instagram's Lively. Meanwhile, I don't understand teams. Um, in life and on the blacktop, I've always been a little bit late, getting drafted to a team, whether it's my choice or not. And yeah, I'm Team Edward. Yeah, I waffle between Team Logan and Team Jess, and I know that does frustrate people. And for that, I'm sorry, but I think that Jess is the better match, but Logan is the better person for her, for the woman she's become, that she's in deep denial about who she is, given that she is so resentful of her privilege, and she wants to perform as a person who's lived this gritty life and existence, but she is just not. She's not. That Rory, I'll tell you. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Gilmore Girls again. But yeah, I think with pop culture stories, I feel like I very rarely am like, I'm team so-and-so or bust. Even if I was, I don't know if I'd tell people that. And even if I told people that, I don't think I'd be in the comments waging warfare on people that disagreed with my hot takes. I guess I'm impressed by the loyalty and like shout out, that's nice of you guys to care so much about these people. But I don't love the vitriol that is created in the infighting in the comments amongst the public that is just kind of like the suckers being manipulated by these people that are bonkers rich and powerful, that are, essentially engaging in a battle of egos. And while I absolutely take Blake Lively's sexual harassment allegations seriously, and I think they should be treated seriously and with empathy, and I actually don't even like how they're folded jokingly into a lot of this dialogue, because it's like, we torched her for saying wear your florals, and we're making puns about her lawsuit that has to do with some pretty serious allegations that I felt sick to my stomach reading, that would make me profoundly uncomfortable, and I do think are harassing, even if other people that wouldn't cross their boundaries, they would cross mine. All the while, I feel so incredibly problematic, because the second I saw in her lawsuit, that, at the top it says they want to go to trial, all I can think about are the looks that are going to be served in court, not with the eyes, with the fashion. My God, can that girl wear a power suit? And, I say I'm not on a particular team, nor do I have any sort of steadfast loyalty to one party. But the two things I am loyal to are women that bring forth misconduct allegations, and how I believe the way we talk about these cases really does matter. And I'm also incredibly inflexibly loyal to Blake Lively's wardrobe during the A Simple Favor press tour, where it was no sleep, bus, club, another club, in terms of couture, power suits, one after the other. And she was experimenting with wearing cuffs without sleeves. I mean, what a time. And yeah, do I blame us for, do I think our positive response to her taking that risk is perhaps what gave her the confidence to dress like a, I don't know, young urban dwelling Ms. Frizzle? With notes of Joey Tribbiani, could I be wearing any more clothes? When she did the wardrobe styling for Lily Bloom, yeah, I do think that's our fault. And so much of this is deeply unfunny and not grounds for jokes at all, but I really did just the clothes in the A Simple Favor press tour, and I think about them all the time, and I don't know, you guys. I don't want this for her, but if she wants to go to trial, I want to see what she wears, and that is something that I am thinking about, and for that I am sorry. While I should be focusing on the actual power suit at hand, the lawsuit that attempts to reclaim her power after an alleged smear campaign, what was I saying? I feel like I'm this combination of person that really wants to take this seriously and feels like people are a little too excited to find ways to discredit Blake. All the while, I'm not all too excited to like champion her because she kind of has lost me, especially this year. And I wasn't happy with how the It Ends With Us campaign was handled. And it's one thing to have a directive from Sony that's like, make it about resilience and hope. And but it's a whole other thing to be like flippant, dismissive, and rude when people bring up this really important topic, you know? But I will say, like, I think that her lawsuit detailed a lot of troubling behavior. I think that we have to listen to the fact that no one else on the cast is friends with him, follows him, and that they've all publicly come out in her favor. Anyways, we'll get into it. I have a lot of swirling thoughts, and all the while, I just am not like trying to like instigate something and rile people up, like the god awful name in this book. Is it Ryle? It's Ryle and Atlas, right? And yeah, I just have a lot of thoughts, but I'm not here to tell you how to feel, and I am not here to suggest that one person is unilaterally right or wrong. What I, honest to God, think is going on here is, as we can see now that there are 3 lawsuits, the Lively versus Baldoni saga, it spans 3 separate but very intertwined lawsuits where Lively's original workplace harassment complaint against Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios, Justin Baldoni's production company. We have Baldoni's defamation suit against the New York Times for their reporting on Lively's allegations. And then we have the PR firm JonesWorks claims against their former employee, Jennifer Abel, for conspiring with rival firm Tag PR to steal clients and weaponize the media against Lively, who still works for Justin. And each suit focuses on different specific grievances. But when you kind of step back, it reveals this incredibly tangled web of power, of control, of reputation. And at the heart of it all is this like battle to define the public narrative around 2 celebrities, their conduct and their film. Part of me feels like a lot of the damage is already done. But really what it comes down to is Blake Lively seeks to frame Justin Baldoni's behavior as part of a pattern of misconduct that ultimately ended up in a PR smear campaign that she perceives as being, a form of retaliation for her bringing those misconduct allegations forward. And Justin Baldoni is suing the New York Times for libel, but in that is airing all of his grievances and is seemingly aiming to portray Blake Lively as an actress who overstepped her role, who orchestrated a hostile takeover of creative control of the movie, and who is now cynically weaponizing harassment claims, for professional gain. And then there's the PR subplot that adds another layer that suggests, both actors' images were kind of at the mercy of these like publicists behind the scenes that were warring with each other, and these crisis managers playing like this chess game, planting stories, manipulating social sentiment to serve their own agendas as much as their clients. And in this light, the lawsuits themselves start to look like an extension of the PR battle, with the legal complaints serving as vehicles to air dirty laundry and shape public opinion, leaving us here being like, so are, lawsuits the new press release? Like, what are we doing here? I just feel like any like micro take I've even developed on this case has changed because we learn something new every day, and it's evolving so quickly. And I think Justin's going to sue Blake directly soon. And I don't know, I can't come in hot with the takes that are going to have a shelf life like that of Trader Joe's produce, meaning non-existent. Like what the hell is going on with their produce? I have a theory that Trader Joe's is the Marshalls of leafy greens. That it is the final destination. It is the excess inventory outlet where the surplus of the nation's leafy greens that no one wants, that are insanely old, go there to experience their final days before they will actively rot in your crisper. I think that when we're kind of dragged into this pop culture story that is like very much designed for like media manipulation in the court of public opinion, it's kind of wild, like just being a normal person developing a public opinion and trying to make sense of like 300 pages of legal paperwork that at this point I'm not sure I'm convinced anybody wants to win their lawsuit, as much as I think that it might just be an opportunity to air as many grievances as possible, to mold a certain narrative about the opposition in a way that rehabilitates our image, that repositions ourselves relative to what allegations somebody else could come out with, and the warfare on social media that happens with these sorts of cases, especially ones that involve claims of abuse or harassment, and the way people are just all too quick to delight in someone's downfall never ceases to scare the shit out of me for what it says about the world, what it's teaching and shaping to young minds that are newer to the world, and makes me question, like, kind of one of the premises of this case, which is this representation of the real world? Because the stuff you see online, like my TikTok is like just a bunch of people who, despite being chronically online and people that should be holding space, are unable to hold space for two truths and are just so fucking mean to literal strangers who just have a different opinion about another literal stranger's situation, as if asking questions or doing a little bit more exploration than just having a singular hot take is some sort of moral failure. But that's the issue. These things are used as like proxy wars. And people like me are on the receiving end of it because over time, even I've been less incentivized to deep dive, as people have kind of claimed the same about my attempt at neutrality, in that it's like not the vibe, not the take, it's problematic. And it's like, okay, well, there's approaching something from curiosity, and then there's approaching something from the need for it to confirm beliefs you already have. And I like the former. I find the latter exhausting, but it's more of where we are right now. And all that to say, yeah, I really think this is going to be huge, and I have a lot of anxiety about it, and you can probably tell by the way I'm rambling. But thanks for being here. Oftentimes, midway, I'll realize, oh, this is going to be 2 parts, so I can definitely see that happening here. I had a conversation with an attorney, a former litigator, because I wanted to responsibly ask some questions about some of this. Her name is Alex Mack, much to my delight. She was great, Attorney Alex on TikTok. Yeah, so she'll be at the end of this, or she'll be in part 2. Hi, this is Kate from the Beyond, here to confirm that yes, indeed, there will be a part 2 that she will be on. So sit back, relax, and settle in for a classic Be There in 5 deep dive. This week's topic is Blake Lively's power suit. Lawsuit, that is, but again, the simple favor suits. Whew, chef's kiss. I built a Venn diagram of like what Blake accused Justin of, and then Justin's counterclaims. And there's like what Blake said happened, what Justin said happened, and the overlap of the things that he directly addressed, while still, wanting to point out the many things that were not, to the best of my ability. This is going to be a beast of an episode because I hope that I'm catching you before your fatigue of this is too high. And unfortunately, my fatigue of wearing this denim vest on camera has reached its maximum. I'm going to go change, thank some advertisers, and do what we do best here at the Be There in 5 podcast, which is we don't get mad, we get a Venn diagram, that is. All right, BRB. Maybe I don't get mad because I also get zen with the Calm app. The Calm app helps me so much with sleep, with stress, with, being away for 2 weeks and staying in, family members' homes in the same room as my toddler, which is not something I've done in a minute. And let me just tell you, the Calm app was my best friend. There's a lot happening these days. It can feel especially stressful or hopeless when things are outside of our control, but Calm can help you restore your sense of balance and peace amidst outside chaos. I'm not a big New Year's resolutions person, and, goals are healthy, but I do think that it's important that we, think of all the things we'll do, yes, but also all the ways that we'll take care of ourselves and slow down when we need to. And Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and change your life. Everyone faces unique challenges in their daily lives, and mental health isn't about cookie-cutter approaches. That's why Calm offers a wide range of content and programs to help you navigate life's ups and downs, including meditations to work through anxiety and stress, boost your focus, build healthier habits, sleep stories, sleep meditations, calming music that will help you drift off to restful sleep quickly and naturally, grounding exercises if you're feeling overwhelmed, which love these, and expert-led talks to help you handle grief, improve self-esteem, whatever it may be. It's in the name. When you need to feel calm, this is where you go. It's in the name. There's a lot of different emotions one could feel that you could benefit from a minute of simmering down, calming down, and Calm puts the tools you need right in your pocket and can help you dedicate just a few minutes each day to living a happier, healthier life. Stress less, sleep more, and live better with Calm. For listeners of our show, Calm is offering an exclusive offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/BeThereIn5. Go to calm.com/BeThereIn5 for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/BeThereIn5. Speaking of things to make your life easier this new year, I think Hungry Root solves like the problem I always had with like food delivery services, in that, if you get like parsed out ingredient recipes, it like means you are required to be making some elaborate recipe that night if you want to eat. Or when you just get groceries, you also often don't know like the best way to, put together what you have to actually make a recipe. Hungry Root is a combination of both, where they send you a box of food, a box of snacks, drinks, whatever you choose for you and your family and your very specific dietary or, flavor profile needs. And they send you recipes that go along with the box of groceries. So you have the option of making simple meals, but you do not have to. And you can use the full ingredients to make other stuff as snacks to save for later. And it's just a really great solution for my family at this juncture, especially now having a toddler. And he can eat what we eat. And so I find myself wanting to, make meals a bit more. We had like the best, like strip steak and sous vide potatoes the other night. We made burgers, shared some with Teddy, shared some with Tug. I just like love opening my fridge and being relieved that I have something because their recipes are always super simple and super accessible. It's like truly the best solution for families. It's basically like having your own personal shopper. They take care of the weekly grocery shopping. They recommend healthy groceries tailored to your taste, your nutrition preferences, your health goals, and they make it easy to eat high quality, nutritious food and achieve any diet or health goals from anti-inflammatory to gut friendly, dairy-free and beyond, and they make grocery shopping simple and stress-free. And Hungry Root has great options for the whole family with healthy groceries and smoothies, kid snacks, sweets, ready-to-eat meals, salad kits, and even supplements. And no HCFS, artificial sweeteners, or preservative in any of Hungry Root's food. It really is like top-notch quality, and I learned about brands I didn't know about before, and I love their snacks. I always get this little pouch of pickles. I get a pouch of olives. I like that I can get both like bite-sized little things, like a little hummus and chips thing, but also I can get like a sous vide half chicken. I just love things that genuinely solve a problem, and you're going to love Hungry Root as much as I do. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/BeThereIn5 and use code BeThereIn5. That's hungryroot.com/BeThereIn5, code BeThereIn5 to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/BeThereIn5, code BeThereIn5. I really do recommend that pouch of olives, so maybe get a bigger item. All right. I've got to admit, feeling better without the denim chest plate. I didn't feel like I could make, a few tepid, if not tasteful, jokes about the PR narrative being at odds as the beanie was with that crop top. When people, if they were watching the video, would be like, relax, January cowgirl. It really didn't make any sense. Okay, so first let's just set the scene with the key players. Of course, Blake Lively from Gossip Girl, and she, of course, got her start in Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and all the girls of the pants have come out to support her, which I was glad to see. So Blake Lively is married to Ryan Reynolds. She signed on to play the lead. She also got an executive producer credit, which becomes important later on. Blake Lively's lawsuit is ultimately a multi-jurisdictional, very complex legal action that combines several types of claims. There are federal claims like Title VII sexual harassment claim, Title VII retaliation claim, federal workplace discrimination lawsuit. There's California state claims about harassment and California labor code retaliation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. And there are many different legal strategies being used to build out this case. This goes beyond what, maybe you and I would experience with traditional workplace harassment. It includes claims about broader reputation damage and targets systemic negative media campaigns as a part of retaliation, which is something that I think is newer to society and that is really hard to trace. This concept of astroturfing that she brings up, I find fascinating, which is manufactured grassroots social media campaigns that popularize a certain sentiment that seem to be organic public opinion, but are actually synthetic consensus. I think those are only going to become more and more of a problem, and seeks $250 million in damages and is primarily a civil lawsuit, not criminal, combining workplace discrimination claims with broader tort claims and seeking monetary compensation and reputation restoration. Yeah, the defendants on it's Lively versus Wayfarer Studios. But the defendants are Wayfarer Studios, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Sarowitz. It ends with Us Movie LLC, Melissa Nathan, the agency group PR LLC, Jennifer Abel, seeking $250 million plus in damages for sexual harassment, retaliation, and emotional distress. And her federal lawsuit filed in New York, it presents like it prevents a disturbing pattern of workplace misconduct. And according to her, that evolved into a very sophisticated and covert retaliation when she tried to address it through proper channels. And according to her complaint during the filming of It Ends With Us, she experienced repeated violations of industry protocols, particularly during intimate scenes, among other things that we'll get into. And when she attempted to address those issues by securing a formal protection agreement during the industry strikes, she alleges that Baldoni, Wayfarer, and the PR team responded with what their own communications described as an untraceable campaign to destroy her reputation. And it's a lot of documentation. It's not just the workplace conduct piece, but the subsequent retaliation piece too. There are like screenshots of text messages showing like PR executives explicitly discussing plans to bury her, all that which occurred after Baldoni and Wayfair had signed an agreement specifically prohibiting retaliation, which is a key part of this. So the complaint suggests that the coordinated attack wasn't just about silencing her. It was about protecting Baldoni's carefully cultivated image as like kind of this male feminist ally. And yeah, so that's Blake. Justin Baldoni is the director turned defendant. He was the heartthrob in the TV show Jane the Virgin. And I knew him from that, and I knew him from being the dude with the man bun on Liz Plank's podcast about toxic masculinity. He's very famously positioned himself as a male feminist ally while running his production company Wayfarer Studios with his billionaire backer, Steve Sarowitz. Together with producer of It Ends With Us, Jamie Heath, they set out to adapt a best-selling novel about domestic violence. So that's kind of the triad of people that Blake brings up often. And I do think it's important to note that there's a lot of commentary about power imbalances and Blake Lively's star power and wealth, Baldoni being lesser known, so on and so forth. I want to be clear that, again, his backer is a multi-billionaire, and resources are absolutely not an issue in terms of financial power in this case. So I actually think that some of the assessments about power aren't entirely fair because there are tremendous resources on both sides. Justin Baldoni he co-owns Wayfarer Studios, the production company, with Steve Sarowitz, the billionaire. And Jamie Heath was a producer on It Ends With Us, but is also the CEO of Wayfarer Studios. We have the PR power players, where it gets interesting. Stephanie Jones runs one of Hollywood's most influential PR firms. Jennifer Abel was her protege until she apparently decided to steal some clients, one of them being Baldoni, last summer when she left the firm and poached Justin and Wayfarer. Then there's Melissa Nathan, a crisis manager who previously worked with Johnny Depp and promises her clients something invaluable, which is untraceability. Melissa Nathan, I mean, she's been attached to a lot of big celebrities, and she emerges as a big pivotal figure in this controversy, though her role as a crisis management specialist typically would make her quite under the radar. She is who allegedly orchestrated the digital campaign against Blake Lively. She launched the agency group PR in January of 2024, and Melissa Nathan was retained by Wayfarer Studios and Justin Baldoni in July 2024, specifically for what internal documents described as social manipulation. Well, Baldoni and co. insists that she was brought on for damage control because they felt Blake Lively was using some of the stuff that went on behind the scenes and allegations of misconduct as like professional leverage. And yeah, it gets messy. Melissa Nathan's involvement adds a deeper dimension to the case by honestly exposing like this modern machine behind the scenes of reputation management, and shows us how crisis PR firms operate behind the scenes and screens that shape public narratives. And I think this is a fascinating part of it. And that's, I think, largely what the press is focused on, and what I'll do as the second part, because Blake Lively's lawsuit is kind of divided into two parts. The workplace harassment allegations, and then the retaliation, which is this alleged PR takedown campaign as orchestrated by Justin Baldoni's publicist, Jennifer Abel, and then the crisis management consultant PR firm they hired in addition, Melissa Nathan. So Justin Baldoni's lawsuit. Plaintiffs are Wayfarer Studios, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Sarowitz, Melissa Nathan, the agency group, Jennifer Abel, and others. The defendant is the New York Times. They're suing the New York Times for libel. He is not suing Blake Lively. I thought that this was because he wanted a way to air his grievances without the optics of directly attacking his accuser, but his lawyer, I think his name is Brian Friedman, he said on like the Today Show recently that they will be suing Blake Lively directly, like immediately. So it should be like any day now, which is crazy. So they're suing the New York Times for libel because the New York Times seemed to be sitting on this like locked and loaded expose about what went on behind the scenes with It Ends With Us, and it directly linked to Blake Lively's California Civil Rights Department complaint. You have the initial complaint filing where you allege the workplace discrimination or harassment. It's a precursor to a lawsuit. Then there's a 60-day right to sue notice after filing the complaint, and then the person who filed the complaint, I think the 60-day period is to allow for investigation, and then you'll receive a right to sue notice. But yeah, that can take up to 60 days. And that document gives permission to file a civil lawsuit. So there's a lot of back and forth about that in terms of a strategic move that I'll talk to Attorney Alex about. But I gather that if you're going to file a workplace harassment suit in the state of California, this is protocol. The other thing that's interesting about suing the New York Times is they haven't lost a libel suit in like 50 years. Like it was like the Nixon administration. I mean, it's been a while. That is not a lawsuit you pursue if you have an intention to win, in my opinion. And what the Wayfarer Studios and all the plaintiffs versus the New York Times is ultimately seeking is $250 million in damages for defamation and false light invasion of privacy. In that lawsuit really works to reframe the entire narrative around It Ends With Us. They're essentially arguing that Blake Lively executed a calculated, or in their words, hostile takeover of their film while positioning herself as the victim. And according to their complaint, she faced public criticism out of her own doing for her tone-deaf marketing of a domestic violence film, though we saw that was a directive from Sony and the way it was marketed. But like I said, there's a balance to be struck of following the rules and having like tact. Oh, according to their complaint, when Lively faced public criticism for her tone-deaf marketing of a domestic violence film, she responded by filing a strategic civil rights complaint, choosing this format specifically because it wouldn't subject her to discovery or cross-examination. The lawsuit contends that Lively systematically pushed Baldoni out of his own project, from demanding unprecedented creative control to hiring her husband's editor, while simultaneously crafting a narrative that would cast any defensive PR efforts as retaliation. It characterizes the PR campaign not as an attack on Blake Lively, but in their eyes as a legitimate response to what they describe as her own team's efforts to plant negative stories about Baldoni, including allegations about his faith and false claims about HR complaints. And they're essentially arguing that they've been cast as villains in a story that fundamentally misunderstands who is targeting whom. And then the third lawsuit has to do with the PR people that I just mentioned. The plaintiffs are Stephanie Jones, who you haven't heard me talk about yet because she was mysteriously left out of the lawsuit, of Blake Lively's lawsuit. Stephanie Jones from Jonesworks, LLC. And the defendants are Jennifer Abel, Melissa Nathan, Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, LLC. And they're seeking unspecified damages for breach of contract, tortious interference, and defamation. Is that how you say tortious? I remember thinking torts were a real snooze in business law. This lawsuit reveals kind of the behind-the-scenes PR industry drama that ultimately exposed the entire controversy. So Stephanie Jones, who owns Jonesworks, LLC, a PR firm, her former employee is Justin Baldoni's publicist, still to this day, Jennifer Abel, but she left Jonesworks and allegedly poached Justin in Wayfarer Studios after she left. And Stephanie Jones is alleging that her former employee, Jennifer Abel, conspired with crisis manager Melissa Nathan to steal clients and damage Jonesworks' reputation, which is interesting because Jonesworks, again, was not named in any of this. The lawsuit suggests that Jennifer Abel, while still employed at Jonesworks, coordinated with Nathan to execute the campaign against Lively without Jones's knowledge or approval. When Jones discovered Abel's actions through examining her company phone, she provided these communications under subpoena, which became central evidence in Lively's lawsuit in the Times article that prompted Wayfarer's defamation suit. And the three lawsuits together create a very interconnected narrative where each case provides not only crucial evidence, but context for the other. The Times story prompted Jones's lawsuit, and revelations from Jones's lawsuit connect back to Blake's initial complaint, and Blake's complaint being leaked in the Times is what prompted Wayfarer / Justin Baldoni's lawsuit. Yeah, the New York Times published their article on December 21st. Stephanie Jones filed her lawsuit against Jennifer Abel on December 24th. Blake Lively filed her federal lawsuit on December 31st, and Wayfarer filed their lawsuit against the New York Times on December 31st. The thing people still seem to not be clear on is that Blake Lively's team says they achieved the communications that exposed the PR campaign details. Lively's team claims they got those through standard legal protocol via a subpoena of Jonesworks. But how can you serve somebody a subpoena before a filed lawsuit? And that's something I need to talk to Attorney Alex about, um, because this subpoena was made possible because Jennifer Abel had surrendered her phone to JonesWorks when she left the company in August 2024. Brian Friedman and Baldoni's lawyer, he's suggesting in Wayfair's lawsuit that Jones might have invited the subpoena as a way to circumvent her confidentiality obligations to former clients. And the lawsuit implies that upon learning that Baldoni was terminating JonesWorks on August 30th, Jones may have coordinated with Lively's team to provide the communication. And I think this theory for some is reinforced by the fact that JonesWorks is not mentioned once in Blake Lively's complaint. See how complicated this is? I'm like, so when I'm scrolling through TikTok or Reels, I'm like, how the hell do you guys have takes? I've spent my entire weekend reading 300 pages of legal documentation, and the only thing I've been able to take is Excedrin. I really like Excedrin. It's got caffeine in it. Anyway, while I I try to be fair, but everyone's biased. It's hard for me to be unbiased, and this is my show. I will provide you my color commentary to a degree, but I think the one bias I should confess that is going to come through is that ever since I first looked into this situation, because I did a Patreon bonus episode about it in August, that isn't my best work, but because I was kind of dabbling in this case, and I think these topics take, a more thorough understanding to be able to talk about them delicately. At the time, I think people were more like Baldoni's on the right side of history because he was the one responsibly navigating the press tour for It Ends With Us. And he was, to his credit, having the right conversations. He was sharing stories from people that had experienced intimate partner violence. He seemed to be doing the right thing. And of course, Blake Lively's lawsuit alleges that he did this to bolster his own image and make them look bad, when the Sony directive was that the promotional tour needed to have themes of, hopefulness and resilience and not focus on it. But anyway, so back then I was kind of on his side as the tour was going on. And I was like, what is the rest of the cast doing? But then as time went on, there were two things that I still can't get over, two major mental roadblocks in my ability to give him the B of the D, if you will, that prevent me from seeing him as the guy that, he and his supporters want us to believe he is, this feminist ally who has the best interest of survivors in mind and was kind of sacrificial in giving up this passion project to a demanding person that creatively and hostily took over. And I don't know. Well, actually, I do believe the creative takeover thing, just not that it was hostile, but I'll get to that later. I cannot mentally get past one. It has to be worth something that every single cast member unfollowed you, didn't pose on red carpets with you, didn't even sit in the same premiere theater as you, didn't do any press with you, and does not seem to like you whatsoever, and now has publicly come out in support of Blake. I think what they were trying to say in the lawsuit is that she withheld him from these spaces on behalf of the cast by whatever power she was able to wield with Sony or whoever, and control how the promotional tour went. But the press tour aside, they're adults with free will who can follow who they want, who can associate with who they want, and who have still chosen months later to come out on Blake's side, as did Colleen Hoover. Even Liz Plank, his former podcast co-host, that was they were such close friends, seemingly, and had a podcast about toxic masculinity and deconstructing it. I mean, everybody has come out on her side. And I feel like it's just kind of a reach to suggest that there is some master manipulation going on her part to get everybody on her team and to isolate him. Occam's razor would suggest otherwise. And secondly, it's the hiring of Johnny Depp's PR firm, which, on what planet are we a champion for domestic violence survivors in hiring Johnny Depp's crisis PR firm, given what they're known for? It is a choice to partner with a PR firm and a person that was so closely intertwined with the trial that, from some of our perspectives, set a precedent with devastating effects on people speaking out against domestic violence in the future. the issue that this movie addresses, the issue that he's allegedly so passionate about, the theatrics of publicly humiliating and shaming a woman who spoke out in an op-ed, and the way it stood to make victims going forward incredibly fearful of a libel suit aimed at their humiliation and destruction should they speak out. Like, on what planet? Anyway, making a note to elaborate on that a little bit more in a moment. Actually, let's get this out of the way because I do think that there are a lot of parallels here. And I never did an episode about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. In August during the press tour, I said something about Johnny Depp in passing, about him like being, a known abuser, because that was my interpretation from the trial, is not the result of the defamation trial, but the countless abusive behavior that was exhibited in discovery. Because remember, it wasn't a domestic violence case, it was a defamation case. Regardless, some people reached out and were like, wait, I thought he was, I thought the whole point was that he wasn't an abuser and there were false claims and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of just wrote a couple paragraphs about the way I feel about that case. And what's interesting is that I now think that this explains well why I think that it is so fundamentally at odds for a person that claims to be a champion for those who've experienced intimate partner violence to partner with this firm, given this context. So yeah, this is me explaining that. This was in August. I was trying to explain why I thought it was a huge red flag that Justin was partnering with Melissa, Nathan, and the agency group PR firm, crisis PR firm. That what I took away from that trial was that no matter the outcome, even the way he chose to approach the trial was an extension of his abusive behavior. So I said, I'm of the opinion that the Depp Heard defamation trial was an extension of his abusive behavior from the second he chose to have it live streamed in Virginia. And we learned of his vow via text message that she was begging for global humiliation and she is going to get it. I know a lot of people don't agree, but I have very little respect for the intentional spectacle that trial was made into by his team and how it ultimately only served one incredibly wealthy, powerful man's regaining of his reputation at the expense of setting a precedent for defamation cases that will punish victims of abuse for a long time. Defamation trials in the context of domestic violence are super tricky in how a pursuit for justice for one person aids in the intimidation and silence of the person speaking out against gender-based violence. When Johnny would admit something violent and crazy in court, people would make memes and laugh and fawn over him. No one flinched at his texts that were fantasizing about all the ways he'd murder her or when he drugged her without her consent. But whenever Amber Heard did literally anything, she was discredited, degraded, shamed, and threatened. It wasn't just making fun of her hair and her clothes and her speech patterns as if that's not bad enough, but it was proven there were coordinated masculinist campaigns, #Justice for Johnny, whose incredibly dangerous messaging resulted in a desensitized general public participating in vile behavior, such as using the terms of her bruise kit, that concealers she had to cover up her bruises, as a content farm to make TikTok videos, or making videos mocking her testimony about marital rape. I think Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is an impossible convo to have online because people get tangled up in who is innocent or guilty in the defamation verdict, but the instinct to qualify who is right or wrong implies technology-facilitated gender violence is ever justifiable. Anyway, so when I'm freaked out by patterns with Blake and am appalled by Justin's choice to retain the PR person who represented Johnny Depp during the trial, it's not because I don't think she majorly fucked up this press tour or that I want to be girl boss supportive. It's because I think it's creepy and abusive in its own right to work with people who have historically allegedly been behind this kind of networked misogyny to get the social conversation trending in the male's favor at the expense of destroying a woman's reputation who is being punished for speaking out against intimate partner violence. No, I don't know for certain, and maybe JB hired JD's PR team for other reasons. Still, there are plenty of other PR firms that can help you manage your reputation publicly. Anyways, I still stand by that. June of 2022, between the Dobbs decision, the Heard Depp trial, it just felt like we were being drop kicked into yesteryear and losing any and all progress we'd ever made. And it was so scary to watch people delight in this. June of 2022 is when I was in the thick of writing One in a Millennial. And that is when the book took a darker turn. And yeah, it will forever be burned in my brain how the general public lost their minds. And it became a level of desensitized where people were shouting from the social media rooftops the cruelest things about this woman that in normal circumstances, I don't think they'd whisper in private. People, it was weird. Whatever. Getting off track. That was risky of me to bring up early in this episode because I know people feel strongly about that trial, and it's been a while and I don't remember all the details. And I never said how I felt because honestly, I just didn't want to be on the receiving end of people that are really aggressive about this stuff. But there you have it. Blake's lawsuit at its heart is, and I hope I'm understanding this correctly, and I probably should have articulated this when I was on the phone with Alex, the lawyer, but I'm trying to put it in words I can understand, so maybe you can understand. Looking carefully at Blake Lively's federal lawsuit filed in New York, it combines two overarching allegations with a series of complaints within each section, like this in my brain. But it is structurally more focused. I think it is structurally more heavily focused on these sexual harassment claims, with the PR campaign being presented as the retaliatory action for reporting that harassment. Does that make sense? This structure is interesting to me because media coverage is focused heavily on PR warfare. I mean, the text message is like, it was hard not to just, like, help, I'm still at the restaurant. Like, I don't know how anybody could move on from them. I feel like that's what we were all focused on for a while before Justin's lawsuit came out. And I've seen a lot of people kind of be like, oh, well, no, they were just, there were quotes taken out of context or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. Even in context, even joking, sarcastic, like these, I still think they're pretty incriminating. But some of the more damning things are like hard to prove. Like Blake Lively's lawsuit says the person, like the co-founder and guy who funds his studio, Wayfair, Steve Sarowitz, who's a billionaire, apparently he told someone at the premiere, like, he was willing to put like endless resources and was prepared to spend like $100 million to ruin like Blake Lively's life and her family's life. Like, whoa. There were direct quotes like, Baldoni wants to feel like Blake Lively can be buried. And the PR people ensuring that could happen without leaving any evidence, that it'd be untraceable. There's quotes about shutting things down and placing stories in his favor. There's him sending really terrible articles and being like, is this us? Did we do this one? They talk about this guy, Jed Wallace, they hired from Texas, who apparently is in the business of like turning social sentiment. That like he was basically, on Twitter and on TikTok, on Instagram, like doing something behind the scenes to skew the sentiment. I'm like, what was he doing? It's just a whole glimpse into a world that like we just never really have that much concrete proof because these people operate in the shadows. And when text messages with Abel, Melissa Nathan reassured, like, we can bury anyone, but I can't write that to him. And there was a scenario planning document that detailed a strategy to discredit Blake, including planning stories to blame her for production delays and portraying her as having a less than favorable reputation. And it was kind of, aimed at intimidating and discrediting Blake while bolstering Justin's image. And Melissa Nathan later bragged about her success in shutting down stories related to HR complaints against Baldoni, calling the efforts genius, which is like, oh. Blake Lively's legal complaint is really, I'd argue, is built primarily around establishing a pattern of workplace harassment, with the PR campaign serving as evidence of how the defendants responded to her complaints in the workplace, rather than the complaints being the central claim of the lawsuit itself. And I think that this way of organizing it is important because it frames the PR campaign as retaliatory conduct rather than the primary harm. And they signed a document that stated that they cannot retaliate as a result of Blake bringing forward misconduct allegations before they started to film again after the writer's strike. We'll get into that in a moment. I think we have to do two things here: treat Blake's sexual harassment claims seriously and with empathy, but also be able to look at the strategy of the filings kind of like separately and critically in a way that does not imply that I am like negating or invalidating the harassment claims. I want to establish that two things can be true. She can represent her valid lived experience, and she and her team can have heavily strategized how to present and structure these claims for maximum effect, knowing it would reach the court of public opinion. So the goal is not at all to doubt someone's experience, but to understand how legal strategy and timing can affect how claims are presented. The picture that is painted in Blake's lawsuit presents a really weird, pervy, unsafe feeling environment. And granted, I don't know the nuances of like Hollywood and actors and SAG-AFTRA and closed sets and whatever, but I'm just going to read a few paragraphs from Blake's lawsuit. I'll go through what Justin addressed afterward, but I just want to read the words from the lawsuit for a minute, like take ourselves out of speculation mode, even take Blake Lively out of it. Just be a woman in this situation and absorb it for what it is. It's her lived experience. She can put what she wants in the complaint. That's for a court to decide, not to like performatively be a woman that blindly supports another woman or to suggest that there's no way she's in the wrong. It absolutely could be. But on this show, like I do want to operate from the posture of believing women. And I do feel like people almost misunderstand what the point of that is and what it means, where it's not like the you go girl situation that I think people interpret it as. This isn't rah rah Rachel Hollis feminism, support women at all costs type thing, even if it's hurting other women, because my version of feminism is only about supporting my own capitalistic gain. It's not about that. It's at its core, it's having this disposition that you are first and foremost going to believe someone is about creating a fair system of listening, of investigating and paying attention to the data that is so stark on this topic. 75% of workplace harassment goes unreported. 3 to 6% result in formal action. The vast majority of real experiences never see the light of day. And the reason is because we live in a culture that reflexively doubts women's experiences. And these pop cultural stories are living, breathing examples of this in action. Foundational reason we advocate for initially believing someone who reports harassment or abuse is to create a safe environment for victims who come forward and to counter and correct for historical patterns that dismiss and silence victims, as evidenced by the data I shared earlier. There are incredible psychological barriers to reporting harassment, and believing somebody doesn't mean, automatically assuming guilt of who's accused. It doesn't mean we skip a formal and fair investigation. Like there's a lot it doesn't mean, but what it does mean is taking people's allegations seriously and allowing for their lived experience to be judged on its own merit and to not conflate irrelevant things with that event as a means to discredit that person and malign their character, as if you have to be a perfect person to be eligible to be considered a victim. I keep having to remind myself because I am alternating by the minute on how, between feeling like incredibly frustrated by what this has turned into and the egos involved and this, all of us like spending our time talking about something that like serves two people's like public image that they really are probably mostly concerned about because it affects their capital. This is really just about themselves only. And part of the reason we, the audience, were initially really frustrated with this whole thing is because the promotional efforts were such a departure from a huge opportunity to have a major conversation about domestic violence. And I'm even more disappointed that the real tragedy is how far away this, what we associate with this movie has gotten from what it really should be about. And it's the people that allegedly care about the story the most that are the cause of it. So yeah, I guess my point is like, it might sound like I'm loyal to Blake, but I'm actually like not. I feel pretty indifferently toward her. But I don't feel indifferent toward like the principle of what this case represents and how it could serve to influence the way people feel about their own situations and their comfort level in coming forward. So to back up, May 2023, filming began, and according to Blake's federal lawsuit, problems started almost immediately. She describes a pattern of inappropriate behavior from Baldoni and Jamie Heath, everything from unauthorized touching during scenes to violations of industry protocols for intimate content. And one particularly troubling incident that I noted was it involved filming a birth scene where Lively was mostly nude with minimal coverage. And not only did she allege that Justin told her she should be mostly nude because most women like to give birth, like what woman would have a hospital gown on while she was giving birth, and that his wife gave birth nude. And the idea of man bun over here, telling a mother of 4 what women do during labor and delivery, makes me want to die. Of all the things that need to be addressed in this, I would like to see these claims addressed. I would feel incredibly violated in these circumstances too. But I think she said that when the birth scene was filmed, the set was chaotic, crowded, and utterly lacking in standard industry protections for filming nude scenes, such as choreographing the scene with an intimacy coordinator, having assigned nudity writer, or simply turning off the monitor so the scene was not broadcast to all crew on set and their personal phones and iPad. Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni also failed to close the set, allowing non-essential crew to pass through, while Ms. Lively was mostly nude with her legs spread wide in stirrups and only a small piece of fabric covering her genitalia. Among the non-essential persons present that day was Wayfarer co-chairman Mr. Sarowitz, who flew in for one of his few set visits. Ms. Lively was not provided with anything to cover herself in between takes until after she had made multiple requests. Ms. Lively became even more alarmed when Mr. Baldoni introduced his best friend to play the role of the OBGYN, when ordinarily a small role of this nature would be filled by a local actor. Ms. Lively felt that the selection of Mr. Baldoni's friend for this intimate role, which the actor's face and hands were in close proximity to her nearly nude genitalia for a birth scene, was invasive and humiliating. Also alarming was that the studio's billionaire backer, Steve Sarowitz, was allegedly allowed on set without her consent, and that is the person that in the lawsuit it alleges that he told someone at the premiere that he would threaten to spend $100 million to destroy her and her family's lives. Lively's, if you will. Baldoni never addresses that, at least unless I missed it skimming and my control F. Blake Lively's claim that Baldoni improvised unwanted intimate contact like kissing during scenes without her consent, unwelcome and unscripted physical touching of a sexual nature. There was one claim of Baldoni's alleged admission during a car ride that he did not always ask for consent and did not always listen when women said no in past sexual encounters. There was a claim that Baldoni and Heath allegedly repeatedly enter her trailer while she was like undressed or getting, body makeup removed or breastfeeding or pumping without her consent. He repeatedly called Blake and other actresses hot and sexy, asked personal, questions about her sex life, like if she and her husband climaxed simultaneously. In the context of a workplace harassment suit, like invading somebody's personal space and exposing themselves to her in a state of undress, like that constitutes severe and pervasive conduct in a work environment. And that's why I think it's interesting to consider like the workplace harassment angle of all of this. This isn't like he said, she said, like pals hanging out. These are people in a work environment. I mean, I'm not a person that was like super open about breastfeeding, and I am really private. And I don't even, I don't like when people. I think it's rude to like ring a person's doorbell. Like, don't come to my house unannounced. Like, I also think that's what's interesting too is people have like different boundaries and different levels of comfort with people crossing those personal boundaries, conversationally, physical space, or intimate moments or otherwise. And like, what might be no big deal to you might be profoundly violating to me. And that's why I think these are also kind of hard to, not only because we don't know shit and shouldn't be commenting on what's true and false for a situation we know nothing about. Also, there's just a spectrum that all this operates on in terms of people's comfort level and how brazen the individuals are in crossing those boundaries and what the courts ultimately would qualify as being legitimate harassment versus what is like just discomfort. Regardless, he sounds like people I've known before in this life, and I would have been really uncomfortable. And the thing is, nowhere in and I'll go through like how Justin responded. He doesn't outright say those are false. He just provides a reframe for every single point, which I think is kind of telling that this is like, she's not lying. It's just a difference of perspective. Blake Lively's assertion that Heath showed her a video of his naked wife giving birth, exposing a colleague to graphic nudity and sexual conduct unrelated to work can be a form of sexual harassment. So, I could understand he's saying that he, for creative direction of a scene, was showing a video of his wife giving birth. But the way she described it in the lawsuit was like she just was handed like a, video of a woman's legs spread unprompted, and she thought it was porn and like told him to put it away, and it like, alarmed her. I mean, call me a curmudge, but like, I can't even watch Grey's Anatomy. If somebody shoved that in my face, it would alarm me. It'd make me uncomfortable, and I'd feel maybe awkward in the, and with the power dynamic and the director dynamic that I wasn't comfortable watching that, and it was being asked of me in my work environment, and that does seem like fair to chalk up to more of like a misunderstanding for what the intent of that was versus how like she received it. This one's wild. Justin claimed that he could talk to Blake's dead father. I mean, on a scale of like slightly granola performative hipster flannel man bun to like full-on ayahuasca douche, I'm feeling like Justin's skewing toward the latter. Not that there's anything wrong with plant medicinal healing. Justin just kind of gives me the vibes of somebody who would endlessly talk about like retreats with shamans and all of the divine knowledge given to him specifically because the universe speaks through him. Again, I don't know this person, but there is a type of person, the Shep Rose of it all, if you're watching this season's Southern Charm, that will use their like transcendental hallucinatory experiences to kind of over-insert themselves into somebody else's life or spiritual plane by sharing a vision or prophecy or thing that they felt while in an altered state that is hard for us here on earth to greet them where they're at, and that oftentimes does not land well. So yeah, claiming you can talk to someone's dead father is quite strange, especially if you don't vibe or get along as people. It's definitely overstepping a boundary. And you know what, Justin definitely gives me the vibes of being a burner. That is definitely a man who has been to Burning Man. That is a person who you'd get stuck talking to at a party about radical self-reliance. And you, not unlike the Burning Man, want to light yourself on fire to get out of the conversation. Anywho, I lost my... Where was I? So what's going on here is that I always use Sammy Sage's most charitable, least charitable. It helps me navigate nuance. Most charitably, there was a really toxic work environment with very few safeguards in place for intimate scenes that, legally should have very many things in place to ensure the comfort and safety of those participating in it that she feels were neglected. And that is very serious. And she brought forth these concerns in late 2023 after the writer's strike, when they were going to resume filming. And we'll talk about this in a second, but yes, so halfway through filming, after a lot of these things happened, she produced a 17-point list being like, these are the things, like the conditions that you need to agree to for Blake Lively to return to set. And it listed a lot of the behaviors like the ones I just mentioned. And they signed it, and they said and agreed that it was like, these were reasonable things that were expected standard industry practices. But her point is, well, okay, but you weren't upholding standard industry practices. This is why I produced this letter. So most charitably to Blake is, this was a really unsafe work environment that she needed to, secure some sort of paperwork to protect herself. So if she returned to filming, that these conditions would be met. Least charitably is that they started having creative differences prior to giving that letter of the 17 things that they needed to agree to for her to keep filming. And Baldoni and co. think that she's exaggerating and embellishing these things, and basically brought forth allegations of misconduct to gain professional leverage so she could ultimately wield more creative control. So that's what I gather the two interpretations are. Okay, so we'll go next to how Justin responded. First, since we finished out, I'm not being exhaustive here. I don't have time. But what I thought were Blake's claims that most needed to be addressed. I think that this is now where the protection letter comes into play. So basically, Blake's life lawsuit says these are things that were happening in addition to other kind of personal conduct claims that were brought up to Wayfair but never investigated during their first part of filming. And despite receiving multiple detailed reports by Ms. Lively and others about Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct, Wayfair failed to investigate those reports or to otherwise institute protections for the cast. This is so even though the incidents discussed above, among others, did not take place in isolation, and many, if not at all, were witnessed by others. By these and other behaviors, Baldoni and Heath and Wayfair engaged in harassing content and failed their obligations to investigate complaints of workplace harassment, prevent inappropriate and harassing behaviors on set, and provide avenues for cast and crew members to safely raise concerns to neutral parties so they could be appropriately addressed. So in May 2023, the writer's strike occurred, and it ended on November 9th. Before returning to production, Ms. Lively attempted to address and resolve the problems on set and requested that Wayfair agree to address the conditions described above. November 9th, Ms. Lively's attorneys provided Wayfair attorneys with a document entitled Protections for Return to Production. In conveying the protections for return to production, she requested that Wayfair agree to implement a plan that would enable everyone to return to work and complete the film with adequate protections to ensure a safe set moving forward. On November 11th, counsel for Wayfair, Justin's production company, said that Wayfair, Sony, and production respectfully acknowledge that your client has concerns regarding safety, professionalism, and workplace culture. Although our perspective differs in many aspects, ensuring a safe environment for all involved is paramount, irrespective of differing viewpoints. Regarding your outline requests, we find most of them not only reasonable, but also essential for the benefit of parties involved. They agree to this. They sign it. It becomes a contractual rider executed January 19th, 2024. The provisions are things like an intimacy coordinator must be present at all times when Ms. Lively's on set. With respect to artist, any and all rehearsal, filming, reviewing of video or playback or dailies or any other interaction with a scene involving simulated sex, nudity, or partial nudity shall be restricted to those persons with essential business reasons for being present, essential personnel as approved by Ms. Lively and Todd Black as further described in the nudity writer. The third said there is to be no spontaneous improvising of any scenes involving intimate and sexual physical touching, simulated sex, or nudity with respect to Blake. Scenes involving her that involve kissing, depictions of intercourse, or any intimate or sexual physical touching must be contained in the screenplay, choreographed in advance in the presence of an intimacy coordinator, and may only proceed as choreographed with consent of all participants in advance. That's because she felt like there was like kissing of his neck and things being said, kissing of her neck and biting of a lip and things that weren't in the script and things that were said that she felt that he wasn't in character but was talking as himself. And then, did I say this earlier? When she brought that up, she alleges that his reply was, "I'm not even attracted to you." The fourth provision was physical touching and or comments on her appearance must be done and made in connection with the character or scene work, not as to her personally. There are to be no discussions with Ms. Lively of personal experiences with sex or nudity, including as it relates to conduct with spouses or others. That's where, like, I do think it's fair to, if there was a reason that they had to prep for their scenes without the intimacy coordinator, and they both wanted to have input, like they would talk about their real life experiences. Like, I do understand that. No one will attempt to enter, interrupt, pressure, or request entrance into Ms. Lively's trailer when she's in a state of undress. There's the provisions basically detail the things we said above. That again, this was given in 2023, signed into contractual writer early 2024. This was handled in private. This had nothing to do with the public dispute. This is before anything had gotten out. And these aren't a bunch of things she pulled out of her ass when her reputation crumbled and she wanted to retaliate against Justin with this complaint. This is something that was handled fully behind the scenes. And it seems like she was concerned in bringing these things forward. There could be retaliation. So the 10th provision said that there shall be no retaliation of any kind against Ms. Lively for raising concerns about the conduct described in this letter for these requirements. Any changes in attitude, sarcasm, marginalization, or other negative behavior, either on set or otherwise, including during publicity or promotional work, as a result of these requests is retaliatory and unacceptable and will be met with immediate action. I won't go through whatever. This is where it gets a little tricky. She says, the all-hands in-person meeting provided for the contract writer on January 4th was attended by Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, producer Alex Sachs, producer Todd Black, and Sony's Ange Giannetti, as well as Ms. Lively and her husband, who attended at her request. At that meeting, parties discussed a list of 20 examples of the behaviors that gave rise to the contract writer from her contemporaneous notes. These behaviors are listed in full in this complaint at paragraph 3. Neither Mr. Baldoni, nor Mr. Heath denied the veracity of Ms. Lively's examples. She requested that they agree that such behaviors would no longer take place as memorialized in the language of the writer, and they agreed. And then they continue with the film editing, production, etc. And then we get on to PR, which is a whole other part. So that last thing I said is most everything Baldoni in response like reframes and doesn't say it didn't happen. There's only, if I am reading right, there's only like one major thing that he says is like outright did not happen, is completely false, and that is those details about that all hands meeting. So according to the lawsuits, Baldoni and Wayfair acknowledged that the January 4th, 2024 meeting took place, but their characterization of what occurred differs significantly. In their lawsuit against the New York Times, they addressed that one crucial aspect of the meeting, the disputed 30-point list. But did they say 30? Because I thought Blake said 20. Hang on. Oh, it's the very first page of her CRD complaint. I've been looking at her New York lawsuit. Justin's lawsuit says, on the very first page of her CRD complaint, Lively inaccurately claims a list of 30 items was agreed upon during this meeting. The assertion is categorically false. The 30-point list is strategically positioned to appear as if it were standalone written document, but no such document was ever presented to Baldoni, the Wayfair team, or to their knowledge anyone else during that meeting or any other time, and therefore could not be agreed to. In reality, many of these items were encountered for the first time in the CRD complaint itself and include references to highly disturbing events that never occurred. The repeated use of the phrase "no more" before each demand falsely suggests that these alleged incidents had previously taken place and needed to cease. The implication is not only misleading, but entirely untrue. Baldoni and Heath left the meeting deeply unsettled by the implications of Lively and Reynolds' behavior and the power dynamics at play. Faced with mounting pressure, weighing the financial implications of what shutting down a film halfway through production would mean, Wayfair made the difficult decision to resume production and finish the film despite fears that Lively was intentionally manipulating facts for her own gain. The stakes were extraordinarily high. Financiers had invested substantial resources, hundreds of cast and crew members, and endured months without work due to the strikes and nearly 5 years of development had gone into bringing this film to life. Filming resumed without further grievances or references to prior disputes from Lively, a fact that Lively concedes in her CRD complaint. So Lively does agree that everything resumed and went according to plan. However, the lasting effects of Lively's allegations left Baldoni uneasy. He and Wayfair continued to make considerable concessions throughout production, all in the interest of successfully delivering an outstanding film. And then this is where they go into Blake Lively taking over editing, firing the film's editor and composer, creating her own version of the film at Wayfair's expense, while the rightful director continues to edit his cut of the film. I'll get there in 1 second. As far as the other allegations, so anyways, I just wanted to make sure we talked about the protections letter, because I do think that combats a lot of the assumption that she threw all this together and mischaracterized a bunch of innocuous behaviors to paint a picture only after her reputation suffered. At least my impression is that she wanted this, like they tried to do this privately. And I'm not going to lie, if this were me and I heard that the person that I brought these out, concerns about misconduct to, I'd hired Johnny Depp's PR crisis person, that I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, there's this retaliation? Are they going to try to take me down? And yeah, like isn't it kind of all starting to make a little bit more sense now to examine what might be argued by the other side is what I said earlier about the timeline context. They might, leveraging how Lively's formal complaints about harassment emerged after the disputes about creative control and editing rights. That timing doesn't invalidate the claims, of course, but it helps us understand the broader context of the deteriorating professional relationships and how that might be used as some form of a motive. So basically what Justin's counterclaim is doing, or his lawsuit of the New York Times and his counterclaims to what she's said and what the New York Times reported, is that the Blake Lively was setting the stage for coercion by drafting a protection letter that intentionally misrepresents the nature of the conversations had between Baldoni and or Heath and Lively, and demands Wayfair parties sign for Lively to return to work after the industry strikes. So they say, so this is where they dispute like the intimacy coordinator and stuff. So with the intimacy, I'll just touch on a few things. The intimacy coordinator and then, yeah, I guess Justin's lawsuit says, over the months leading up to film's release, Lively and her collaborators consistently scrutinized interactions with Baldoni and employed tactics that fall squarely within the definition of gaslighting. This behavior pressured Sony, Baldoni, and Wayfair into ceding control to Lively at every turn, resulting in her domination of nearly every aspect of the film's production, which will transition us to her like creatively taking over. I'll get there in a sec. I guess, thinking about those claims about this all being like a plot for coercion of creative control, like it's there. His word against her is like, I don't know what happened. But what I will say, the sexual harassment allegations, I feel like this is something that's being overlooked and not being taken as seriously, because this is a legitimate workplace harassment claim. And they're completely glossing over the possibility that they ignored industry protocols and safeguards. I don't know if I'm missing something, but I guess I'm just putting myself in her shoes as a woman. And like, I think the birth scene sound like having a tiny strip of fabric on like your crotch, being nude, having all these people around, people you didn't consent to coming around, to having the cameras and monitors out, you're like in place for a scene. And sometimes you're not supposed to be moving because of continuity, and to not be able to be covered up, and to have like somebody's buddy be the OBGYN whose face is in your, like, think about it. You don't have to like someone or, you don't have to like someone or everything they've done in their life to like believe that that is something that happened. And I think that that's what is confusing to me. Like, TikTok's a wild place right now. And it's not that I don't think that there are merits to a part of Justin's side, which we'll get into. It's that like I think these things need to be treated in isolation. And there's a bigger issue of this reflex to comment on every single post that, yeah, maybe she's a victim of harassment, but she's a bitch in those interviews. And guys, trust me, I know she has a rap sheet of unfavorable behaviors and offensive things. Like that is not something I'm ignoring. But these situations involving allegations of misconduct, harassment, they require focus for what they are, because we're not talking about things that happened 15 years ago. We're talking about the allegations at hand. And I think it's absolutely fair that those are things that, you incorporate into your impression of a person, if you support them or not, if you like them or not. You don't have to like people to believe them. Somebody doesn't have to be likable to be credible about an isolated circumstance. And if it turns out to not be credible or trustworthy, that's a big fucking problem. And we'll talk through that too. But this is what I mean is believing someone is opening up and leaving space for listening and for a fair process to occur in seeking justice. And that does not imply the automatic guilt of another person. That's why I don't really like team this, team that, because we only have the information we have. And it's not about like being right or wrong. I'm like, I called that. It's like, I just want to take a step back, recognize this as a workplace harassment claim. Think about these allegations not in the context of, two buddies, but a boss and a subordinate at work. And even though I know that this is an unconventional job that is not relatable to many, and these are people in immense positions of power and privilege, it's like when a story becomes this big, it's not about like fighting for them. It's almost about fighting for the narrative that millions and millions of people will be exposed to, and hoping that something productive can come from something garnering this much attention. And the thing that's hard is when it comes to conversations about sexual harassment in the workplace, it's a pervasive issue that, yes, affects women across all backgrounds. But it's also crucial to acknowledge that women of color, low-income women, face this problem at disproportionately higher rates. 1 in 3 harassment claims filed with the EEOC were submitted by women of color, despite them making up a smaller portion of the workforce. And low-wage workers are also particularly vulnerable. More than 25% of those earning less than $11.50 per hour have reported sexual harassment experiences. And it is profoundly frustrating when we have, data that shows the problem disproportionately affects certain groups. And many of these stories never receive public attention. Meanwhile, the richest, most powerful, white woman in Hollywood is getting the most attention. And if the alternative narrative is that the, sexual harassment claims are being exploited for, to wield power, creative control, whatever it is, like if that were to be provable, that would be a huge fucking problem. I'm trying to keep in mind the many, many people who experience this and have no resources. They fear retaliation. They don't trust the system. Countless incidents go unreported. And yeah, when I let myself go there mentally, the idea that somebody in the most privileged, powerful position imaginable would exploit such a serious topic for their own personal capitalistic gain, for their own image, at the expense of this giant story contributing further to the erosion of credibility of victims, the weaponization by bad actors, the misdirection of like outrage and resources paid attention to a case like this, the reinforcement of harmful stereotypes. There are endless reasons this would be outrageously horrendous if what Justin's saying is true. I just want to be abundantly clear that this is just not about me being like, Blake Lively, you go girl, power suits, rocket bitch. I think this issue is like really profoundly important, and it's really not funny at all. These things didn't, but the workplace, I'm like, there's so many witnesses, and there's cameras and mics. Like, it's hard for me to like believe she could allege all of that about the circumstances on set and genuinely be fabricating it if there were so many other people there. But like, let's say the other like smaller interactions that are harder to prove. Like, yeah, if she like sat back during the writer's strike and concocted a way to mischaracterize every single interaction to paint a narrative of Justin that would make him look so bad that it would somehow past her creative control. Like, if she masterminded that and is willing to exploit a sexual harassment claim on a world stage just so she could have more say in, like, the creative direction of, like, a mid-movie and, like, its sequel, like, Jesus Christ Superstar, may God help us. It's possible it's a combination of both, but I think we have to, like, I do think it's worth something that before this was ever made public, this was put in a 17-point list that they signed that was handled privately. And she put in there language about retaliation because she was probably scared of that and wanted to be able to have more of a voice on set about what went down. And I understand that she could be difficult and abrasive and controlling on the creative piece, but I still don't know if that's correlated. And that doesn't negate somebody, experiencing an inappropriate workplace and a person not filing the legal safeguards for certain types of scenes. So anyway, you guys, nuance. I don't know anything for certain. I just want to walk us through the hypotheticals and try to not just, I don't know, be like Team Blake, Team Justin, she's a bitch and a liar. He's a champion for women. It's like, that's the stuff that's just like driving me nuts. There's so much more here. If this truly genuinely only had to do with like image rehabilitation so she could book her next gig. Like people are allowed to care about their own livelihood and well-being, and nobody, regardless of a background or position of privilege, deserves to be harassed in the workplace. But yes, I understand why the hypothetical circumstance of this not being legit would enrage people. I mean, you can consider her former A Simple Favor co-star, Anna Kendrick. She did a movie about domestic violence. She donated 100% of the proceeds because she felt so weird about it. You know what I mean? And Anna Kendrick's kind of a person that's gotten a bad media edit, but that was like, and she like mentioned it offhandedly, but I don't even feel like that was a big story. And that was like really fucking cool of her. And these are not identical situations. I think what makes me nervous is, given how the whole press tour went and like the kind of lack of natural inclusion of sensitivity around how we talk about DV in, Blake Lively's press tour. I'm like, God, I just really hope she surprises me and will use this to have a bigger dialogue. But that's what I hoped for last time. So maybe that's wishful thinking, but we only have the information we have. There is absolute validity to being concerned, and if proven to be false, outraged at the hypothetical scenario of the exploitation Justin is suggesting is true. The reality is truth sometimes lies somewhere in the middle. I don't know what we'll actually ever find out, but reading the claims on her lawsuit about the workplace conditions specifically, there are a lot of witnesses. There are a lot of cameras and boom mics around. Like there could not be a scenario that's probably more documented. And even though we don't relate to problems of actors in Hollywood, those safeguards for intimate and nude scenes, prioritizing the privacy and consent of the actors, staying within scope of the choreography as outlined by an intimacy coordinator. And like all these, it's not a job we relate to, but these are still things that they deserve to have in place that should be enforced, and that she deserves to make an example of this if the case was that it really was not happening in an egregious way. And the things that might not faze him as being a big deal doesn't mean they're not a big deal to somebody else. It doesn't mean they don't cross somebody else's boundaries. And even though we can have a lot of conversations about if this or that really constitutes like harassment versus just generalized discomfort or difference of opinion, I do think if you focus on the actual workplace harassment allegations that have to do with the terms on set, that is a very valid thing for her to be bringing to light. So just wanted to get that off my desk, because that goes for anybody. This is not about being a Blake Lively stan or a problematic person weaponizing feminism to shame people that don't support her. Trust me, I know how exhausting these conversations get with the weaponized feminism. If, people don't support Blake Lively, the flip side of it's people in the comments being like, you're an internalized misogynist. And it's like, okay, we just kind of toss around these things to shame each other for our dispositions. And meanwhile, I just think the more important thing is to talk about why we have these dispositions. I get how easy it is to who has time to dig into everything that the headlines represent? Based on a lot of headlines, based on my TikTok, I'd be like, oh my God, Blake Lively's such a liar. And I'll go through Justin's his counterclaims now. I actually don't think it's nearly as damning as people seem to think it is, because like the evidence in response shows like an isolated situation here and there that I don't think represents like blanketed consent for the thing that he did. Anyways, we'll get into it, but yeah, I guess ultimately my disposition is that I like to believe, and I want on my platform to lead with that a person can be simultaneously imperfect in their past actions, capable of being hurt or mistreated, and still be deserving of fair treatment and deserving of respect. And yeah, now we'll go through how Justin responded. I hope you're not bored. Whenever I'm like doing too much reading off of something, I'm like, I don't know if this is a vibe. This is supposed to be an entertaining podcast, not a laser disc from the 90s. Okie doke. You know, it's a heck of a lot easier to incorporate in your skincare routine than like washing and rubbing stuff on your face. It's like swallowing your skincare routine. That sounded weird, but Ritual has a skin supplement called Hyacera that is clinically proven to support your skin hydration with science-backed benefits like reducing wrinkles, improving skin smoothness. I'm just obsessed with this product because I don't need another serum. And Hyacera is a once daily skin supplement clinically proven to reduce fine lines and increase skin smoothness in 90 days. They do not have to do these clinical studies. This is not a regulated category. This is always what I loved about Ritual. They are all about transparency, supply chain transparency. Their bottles transparent, their pills are transparent. Gorgeous product, high quality standards. A female-owned company who was always trying to find solutions, and she started this company because she couldn't find a prenatal vitamin with a transparent supply chain. So she made one herself and has become an essential part of countless people's rituals ever since. And Hyacera is such a unique product in it being skincare from within. I mean, especially in the winter, dropping temperatures, lower humidity, and keeping up with, it can be a tough time for your skin. And especially in the windy city here, your skin can like get chapped. It's so dry. And Hyacera supports skin hydration. And in another clinical study, Hyacera led to a 2.9x increase in skin smoothness within 90 days as compared to placebo. And subjects reported an improvement in skin elasticity, glow, and radiance in 90 days. I mean, why not enhance your skincare routine from the inside out on this New Year's? Oh, and it tastes like soothing vanilla. It's like the only, Ritual vitamins are the only like pleasant vitamins to swallow, I swear. They're rigorously tested and validated by third parties. And they have industry-leading sustainability standards. It's a female-founded B Corp, meaning they are holding themselves accountable to not just their company's financial health, but also the health of people and our planet. I also take I took their prenatal, pre and post kit, and I still take it because I like it. I think pretty soon I'm going to venture into their sleep bio series. I'm very interested. But regardless, if you want to start Hyacera today to support your glow without compromising on clean science, Hyacera from Ritual is a clinically proven skin supplement you can actually trust. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/BeThereIn5. That's ritual.com/BeThereIn5 for 25% off your first month. This just in, got a text from my sister-in-law. I gave her OC Andaria body oil for Christmas. And I just got a text that said life, period, changing, period. You're welcome. If you want to find little things to incorporate into your self-care routine this year, look no further than Osea. I'm actually having an Andaria algae body butter moment. It helps your body have healthier, glowier skin all over, all year long. I like it for winter because, like, I love the oil because it, keeps in moisture. It lasts all day. It's not greasy. But I love it especially for warmer months because when I'm like, my arms and legs are out, it kind of gives me that dewy glow that you always see people have, a clavicle shimmer here, a thigh shine here. And you're like, dang, Barbie legs, what's your secret? And it's like, body oil probably. But these days I am covered head to toe in my frigid basement, and the body butter is keeping me smooth, keeping me hydrated, keeping me smelling delicious. And I don't know, I'm just like into the texture. It's not greasy, and the scent is absolute heaven. It's like grapefruity, cypress, lime, mango, mandarin. I don't even know. I don't even care. I smell like a summer's day in Malibu from my subterranean basement in the tundra of Chicago. And that's all that matters. If you've, taken my rec and tried the oil, I think you should try the body butter too, because it's a similar sensation of like, where have you been all my life? But it's, it's thicker. It's great for winter. It's unbelievably rich in texture, and it absorbs instantly. Like somehow, I don't know how they do it, and it feels fantastic. And it's made with ingredients normally reserved for your face, like Undaria seaweed and ceramides. And it transforms dry, crepey skin into smooth, soft, and supple. Skincare is a habit worth keeping all year round, but especially this time of year, prioritize body care, and body butter can help your skin have a healthy glow every day. Give your skin a new year glow up with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now we have a special discount just for our listeners. Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code BeThereIn5 at oseamalibu.com. So the first category is unauthorized intimate scene modifications. Blake alleged that Justin added a graphic scene where her character would orgasm on camera without her consent. He attempted to keep a scene of simultaneous orgasm on their wedding night. He would improvise intimate physical interactions during filming, including discreetly biting and sucking her lower lip during kissing scenes, shooting scenes repeatedly beyond standard practice, and not obtaining advance consent for physical intimacy. And this was addressed by Justin in his lawsuit. The counter narrative was basically that he argued that all intimate scene discussions were done through the intimacy coordinator. He claimed Lively herself refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator and provided text message proof. He states that he was forced to relay coordinator suggestions to Lively separately, describes conversations about intimate scenes as collaborative character development, and points out that Lively was involved in discussing scene details and suggests she's mischaracterizing professional creative discussions. The one thing I will say about the claims Lively herself refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator, I don't fully, that text to me was like, not that she didn't want one or she refused to ever meet with her. I'm not sure I totally follow why this is damning, but also I don't, obviously I'm not an actress. But let me go to his document. So section 21 of Baldoni's complaint says, also misleading, the article draws on Lively's assertion that Baldoni improvised unwanted kissing and discussed his sex life. However, Lively intentionally excluded that Lively refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator to plan out the film's sex scenes. Baldoni, in turn, was forced to meet with the intimacy coordinator alone and relay any suggestions to Lively separately. Notwithstanding Baldoni's reluctance, he and Lively would later sketch out the scenes together, absent the intimacy coordinator. As part of these creative discussions, they had to personalize it and develop their characters, and in doing so, engaged in conversation about their individual experiences. The Times, taking Lively's CRD complaint as true, characterizes this discussion as an inappropriate attempt by Baldoni to talk about his sex life. It was not. Baldoni consistently acted at the direction of the intimacy coordinator. These baseless accusations do not constitute sexual harassment. I guess what I don't understand, so later on we'll get to a place where you'll see that over and over and over, he doesn't want her involved, yet he never says no. In fact, I would never even know to read from these communications that she was doing anything wrong. I don't know. I'm just like, we'll get there. But a lack of pushback to the things he claims frustrated him is like a theme. So he texted Blake saying, just hired intimacy coordinator who I love. We'll set you up to meet /FaceTime with her next week for intro. She said, I feel good. I can meet her when we start. Thank you, though. And he said, thumbs up. So he sends that to a female producer saying, FYI, wanted to tell you about this. Seems she doesn't want to meet intimacy coordinator until we start, which may mess up the workflow, but I can still meet with her, of course. And then the producer says, that's fine if she doesn't want to meet her now. You'll just have to walk her through what you and the intimacy coordinator are thinking. So, but there's no indication there that what she was doing was wrong or a problem, or that she would do you know what I mean? Like, he said he's going to set her up with an intro. Maybe she didn't really want to take on another meeting and she trusted who he chose and she just thought, cool, we'll meet on set and figure it out then. I'm like, well, was she told that the intent of that meeting wasn't just an intro, but to choreograph the scenes? Because it's not really explicitly said. And again, maybe we don't have the, added context, but, he offered. She said, I'm good. I'll meet her when we start. And he thumbs upped it, didn't say anything to her, said something to the female producer, and the female producer said it's fine. So, I don't know. This is where I get confused. And the next section is the allegations regarding inappropriate comments about her body. So Blake alleged there was a repeated use of the word sexy to describe her appearance. There were comments made about her weight. Her trainer was asked about her weight for a lifting scene, and it made her feel objectified and uncomfortable. Justin's counter-narrative was that the sexy comment was specifically about wardrobe, not her personally. Says that Blake herself had previously requested her character's wardrobe be much sexier. Explains the weight inquiry was about ensuring a safe scene choreography. Allows the comments were professional, not sexual. Provides context that shows these were creative discussions and not harassment. The thing with asking the trainer about her weight, is that a problem if you were essentially in a workplace and have a serious injury and are required to perform a stunt that you need to prep or train for or understand the reality of your ability to do it? Because that's like a major liability. Is that body shaming? I don't know. That's when I'm kind of like, not on her side. But it kind of seems like that is one of the breaking points that made Ryan Reynolds lash out against him, is comments about her weight. And, you know, I have all of the empathy in the world for the confusing nature of being a postpartum woman, as Blake was, you know, had her fourth child during the filming of this, and how complicated body image can be. And, you know, maybe the way he went about it was out of line, or that's not a standard thing you would ask. I don't really know, but I do think it seems valid that would be about ensuring safe scene choreography. I think about this all the time if I were ever on Dancing with the Stars. I'm like, does Gleb know I would crush him like a bug? Like, what if you can't do lifts? Most of the time, most of the dances for the girls that can't dance are just lifts. The evidence provided in Justin's counterclaim regarding, like, sexy, for example. He says, the allegation that Baldoni inappropriately described Lively's character's attire as sexy is exaggerated and misleading. The text exchanges between Baldoni and Lively show that Lively had insisted that her character's clothing be much sexier. When Baldoni later used the word sexy, he was just responding to her creative input, not objectifying her personally. Lively set the tone that Baldoni heeded during the creative process. So this is why I'm like, well, is this the only time it happened? You know, like, isn't she referring to, like, people being called hot and sexy on set? But this is like I'm not clear on, like, if a singular text message is a valid piece of evidence that you can project onto an entire claim that allegedly happened repeatedly outside of this one text message. I'm not totally sure. Regardless, though, I mean, he's not wrong. And this just is fundamentally hilarious given the nightmarish wardrobe that Lily Bloom had and the, I think, vision Blake thought she was executing with those work jackets and boxers and, like, the layers and Carhartt jackets and overalls and patches and, like, quirky accessories. I mean, you know, I think it's fair to say that many of our responses to Lily Bloom's clothing when those paparazzi shots came out was, it's like, finally, you know, eccentric elementary school art teachers are given the representation they deserve in urban streetwear. But honestly, that's an insult to art teachers because I love their fashions and swirly silver jewelry. And if I'm being totally honest, the way the clothes are, like, layered and worn in this kind of unconventional way, it's giving Doug Funny's alter ego Quailman more specifically, and I won't be elaborating further. She wasn't off base with the work jacket. It's very hot right now. But the layering of boxers and loud printed palazzo or patchwork pants with a crop top and a beanie and suggesting that, let me read the text. This is, you know, this is a little funny because it gives us a line of sight into creative decisions that we, the people, desperately needed answers for. She says, we'll show you both ways, but beanie is much sexier. It's the look. Feels TV without, especially with the crop top in the snow. It justifies the rest of the skin. And also, as a girl, I would check out walking down the street because it washes the effort off the rest of the look. Sorry, what?
Hey.
I mentioned the comment about the birth scene, like, women give birth naked, and his wife ripped her clothes off, and, like, women don't wear the hospital gown giving birth, like, eye roll. He added multiple, like, intimate partner scenes that were off script or weren't in the book. Would say things like that was hot, following a sex scene. He pressed Blake to sage her employees, which, you know, WWADD, what would an ayahuasca douche do? JK, shout out to Sage. In a car ride with Blake and her driver and assistant, Justin said, did I always ask for consent? No. Did I always listen when they said no? No. When discussing his past relationships? Oh. Stomach turner. After witnessing this incident, the driver cautioned Blake to not be alone with Justin. So the workplace allegations, or the stuff in that previous category, he didn't address the accusation in the car. He didn't address Blake to sage her employees. He didn't address, I can't find it. His, like, friend being the doctor that was, like, in her crotch area, you know, having an open set. I mean, honestly, I actually think that for all the things that his includes, like, Baldoni's direct response to the birth scene is notably limited. In Wayfair / Baldoni's lawsuit against the New York Times, they acknowledged the scene occurred but avoided addressing, like, the specific nudity request, for example. Their legal response really focuses on reframing the broader production context rather than explaining the directorial choices about nudity. Even though I think he does address somewhere that, oh yeah, he addresses that the video of his wife giving birth is just like for creative collaboration. Really any of the conversations about sex, personal questions, asking her if they've climaxed at the same time, showing the nude video, like that all kind of falls under this broader umbrella that he says was for like creative direction and collaboration. But regarding the birth scene, like I just think that is hands down the most damning. Not only like the directorial pressure that wasn't in the script that women, to pressure her to be nude by women give birth naked, and his wife ripped her clothes off, blah blah blah, and also the lack of standard industry protections during filming, presence of non-essential personnel, delays in providing coverage between takes. So like I think his silence in about that topic is quite strategic. These are significant allegations from a legal perspective. And yeah, rather than deny or explain it, his team appears to have chosen to focus on challenging other aspects of Lively's claim. It seems like Justin Baldoni's approach has largely to do with business conduct allegations, while avoiding any detailed responses to his personal conduct claims. And like I said, that scene, the birth scene, like I just think that is like the most important thing that could have been addressed or cleared up, and it wasn't. Because one, it involves potential violations of industry protocols for filming intimate scenes. Two, they relate directly to conditions violated from the protections for return to production agreement that they signed. Three, it includes the presence of Wayfair co-chairman Sarowitz, which allegedly said at the premiere that he was going to destroy the Lively's lives and would spend $100 million on it, which what is that linking to? Retaliation. And four, they demonstrate the type of workplace conduct that prompted Lively's formal complaints that would suggest the reason she filed them was not to get creative control, but because of an unsafe workplace environment. So the absence of a direct response to those allegations, I think, might become more significant as the legal proceedings continue, particularly if discovery reveals additional documentation about the scene's filming. Okay, the next category is invasions of personal space. So Blake alleged that he would enter her trailer uninvited while breastfeeding in a state of undress, removing makeup, or in inappropriate proximity during intimate conversations. And Justin's counter-narrative to these was that Lively had previously invited him into her trailer while pumping, notes that breastfeeding was often done openly in production meetings, provides text message evidence showing comfortable collaborative interactions, suggests these interactions were normalized and consensual, characterizes her claims as deliberate mischaracterizations of routine professional interactions. This is Section 71 of Justin's counterclaim. Lively also established very early that it was acceptable to be present while she was breastfeeding. Both Heath and Baldoni have children and are comfortable around breastfeeding mothers, and Lively seemed equally comfortable. In fact, Baldoni's wife co-founded a company that makes a breastfeeding garment, a prototype that originated with his mother when he was a baby. As revealed in a text message exchanged between Baldoni and Lively less than 2 weeks into filming, Lively invited Baldoni into her trailer to rehearse lines while she was pumping breast milk. Lively now alleges in the CRD complaint that Baldoni and or Heath would enter her makeup trailer of their own volition while she was breastfeeding. Notably, breastfeeding was an activity she often conducted openly in the presence of both Baldoni and Heath, including during production meetings. I'm struggling with this one because they show one text that says, "I'm just pumping in my trailer if you want to work out our lines." That's all it says. Obviously, I don't know whose take is more accurate, but I will say that singular text message alone doesn't do it for me I just don't understand what kind of legal evidence this is, because her texting him, inviting him to her trailer to work on lines while she was pumping breast milk represents an individual event and not consent or a free-for-all going forward. And that makes it hard for me, the observer of the documentation, to understand if there really was a blanketed assumption of consent, given that she seemed to comfortably pump or breastfeed in meetings, in and outside of her trailer. I don't know. But the thing about that text is it represents a specific invitation for a specific purpose of line reading in a specific time under conditions she controlled. And as a mother, I will say that just because I'm cool with somebody being around for a specific purpose, for me pumping in one scenario, it is a personal and intimate thing that you may need to keep private sometimes, may be okay in front of people other times. And it is nobody's choice but your own when and how and who is able to be around. And conversely, Blake's lawsuit alleges that Justin later entered her trailer uninvited when she was undressed, including when she was breastfeeding. And that represents a technically different situation, right? One where there's no invitation, there's no specific work purpose, at a time she didn't choose, and when she was in a vulnerable position. there's also a power dynamic here. You know, a director and studio head, they have authority over Blake. A one-time invitation needed to be understood within strict professional boundaries, and that wouldn't be an open-ended permission that could be interpreted through the lens of his authority. And what we don't know is if that text being put in this document is just like one tangible example they can provide, like, of many. And I'm sure they'll, you know, in discovery, they would expand on this. So it's not to say he's lying. It's just from what I have access to, it doesn't really hold up for me. But also this distinction does become relevant given the protections for return to production agreement, which again was filed long before any of this ever occurred, and would be a reason that would refute that she added all of this stuff in the complaint, just make him look worse, that weren't actually issues. This was an issue halfway into filming in the contract they signed, because that agreement specifically included provisions about trailer access and personal boundaries, suggesting the incidents were concerning enough to require formal documentation and prevention. So conflating a single invited visit with general permission misunderstands professional boundaries and the nature of consent itself. And even though people might not agree with me, and I'll talk to Alex about it and see what she thinks. All right, so as far as potential sexual harassment, Blake alleges that they discussed personal sexual experiences inappropriately. He would ask her about her intimate life, make sexually charged comments, and created an uncomfortable work environment. Justin's counter-narrative to this in his documents describes these discussions as attempts to develop character depth, argues conversations were mutual and part of a creative process, claims he consistently acted professionally, and suggests Blake is weaponizing innocent interactions, and emphasizes his long-standing public persona as a feminist ally. So there's that. Then we go to contextual misunderstandings. So Justin also explains that most allegations stem from taking professional interactions out of context, and suggests a deliberate strategy to reframe collaborative moments as harassment, and argues that the interactions were part of a normally collaborative filmmaking process, and points to their initially positive working relationship. Those are the accusations from Blake's lawsuit that Justin had counterclaims for. You'll notice that I can't recall one of them he said was categorically false. What's interesting is that everyone's like, Blake's such a liar, blah, blah, blah. But he actually is not refuting that any of these things happened. All of his responses are basically a reframe. So it's like the stuff isn't false. It's just open to interpretation, which is endlessly complicated in the context of sexual harassment, power dynamics, workplace boundaries, and how different people perceive different behaviors, depending on a lot of those factors that another person might not understand. And then in the document, Justin positions himself as committed to the film's message about domestic violence, emphasizes his history with feminist activism, suggests the allegations are designed to damage his carefully constructed public image, and argues his actions were always intended to create a respectful, collaborative environment. And ultimately, it's a very complex narrative. Both parties are essentially arguing about how they interpreted shared professional experiences that no one's refuting the existence of, rather the perspective about what was above board and what boundaries were crossed. And the core conflict is really about, I guess, what we find out later in the document: power, creative control, and the ability to define the narrative of these interactions. And I said it once, I've said it twice, I'll say it again. I do think that it is important to keep in mind that these concerns were expressed mid-filming and were not only brought up after her reputation was allegedly destroyed by members of his team as a means to paint him in a certain light. Now we're going to talk about the PR piece. What I find so interesting that I didn't know a ton about, but now I'm obsessed with, which is astroturfing. It's a play on grassroots. Grassroots movements are organic. They come from real people, and astroturf is obviously artificial grass. Honestly, I dig some turf. It makes too much sense. I don't want to spend this wild and precious life on lawn care. Tugboat doesn't know the difference, and sometimes I wish I had it. But in this context, astroturfing refers to creating an illusion of natural public support or opposition while hiding that it's actually orchestrated. These next two advertisers were like borderline triggering me. Oh wait, what do they call the opposite? Like a good trigger, a glimmer? Glimmering me, because I was sitting at my desk and realized I wanted to be sitting in bed. So I moved on over to my bed mic for the occasion. Yes, I have a bed mic. The first is Cozy Earth. You guys, I gave my loved ones the gift of Cozy Earth this holiday season. I even got my dad and brother a set of matching joggers. I'm converting everybody I know. My Cozy Earth bedding is life-changingly comfortable. Their pajamas with the long inseam and the bamboo fabric are complete heaven. I travel in their jogger set to the airport. I am making my world, my earth, as cozy as possible. And my latest acquisition is bamboo sheets that with this very elegant driftwood pinstripe. They're my favorite ones I've ever gotten from there. And their all-weather comforter, of course, that blows my house guests away. With the bamboo duvet that has matching buttons and holes and the duvet and the comforter match, so it's not a pain to wash and put on. And I love everything from there. It's hard to pick my favorites. What's so special about Cozy Earth is the quality and care. Cozy Earth bedding products have a 100-night sleep trial, a 10-year warranty. You have to feel the difference yourself with their best-selling bamboo sheets made from 100% premium viscose from bamboo. Their breathable sheets are uniquely soft, and they get softer with every wash, which is my favorite part. It makes me admittedly wash my sheets more. And their stretch knit long sleeve bamboo pajama set is one of their it products for a reason. It's a very timeless pajama, but the softest stretch knit imaginable with incredible breathability. There's a better drape than your average pajama that I have trouble explaining. And the lightweight set sleeps degrees cooler to keep your temperature just right through the night. If you want to try it for yourself to make your world a little bit more cozy, visit cozyearth.com and use my exclusive 40% off code BeThereIn5. If you get a post-purchase survey, say that you heard about Cozy Earth from this podcast. A better year starts with better sleep. Wrap yourself in Cozy Earth. Our next advertising partner is Helix Sleep. You guys know how I feel about Helix Sleep as I sit on my Helix. Let's do a little Helix by the numbers and change it up. Did you know that 82% of customers report improved sleep after switching to a Helix mattress? 74% of Helix customers with back pain reported a reduction in generalized back pain. 82% of participants saw an increase in their deep sleep cycle. Participants on average achieved 39 more minutes of overall sleep per night. Think about hitting snooze. You get a tight 39 in. Ugh, what a dream. Helix has the most awarded mattress brand for a reason. Time and time again, they come out on top. Be there in 5 stars for me, but probably more importantly, 40,000 plus 5-star reviews on their website. The great thing about Helix Sleep is you can find their mattresses through an online sleep quiz. They ask you if you sleep hot, if you sleep on your back, or if you have a partner, and what their preferences are. There are a bunch of different mattress models that are a combination of coils and foam that are this incredibly high-quality mattress that is not your average internet mattress company. I've never had a Beth tell me they returned theirs. True story. And people always, live shows on the street, always tell me about their Helix mattress because we've worked with them for so long. I'm never going to give up. I'm currently sitting on a Midnight Luxe with a cool topper. It helps keep me temperature regulated. I am a stomach sleeper and I like a medium level of firmness. I want us to take care of ourselves, and please don't ring in the new year with an old mattress. If you've been thinking about it, I think it's time because we have a great deal on our hands. The New Year's sale from Helix is 25% off site-wide, plus 2 free Dream Pillows with mattress purchase, plus free bedding bundle, which is 2 Dream Pillows, sheet set, mattress protector with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. I love the Luxe line. Oh my gosh, they're these incredibly thick, high-quality mattress. Those are the ones we have in our house. It comes in a box right to your door. Expands before your eyes. They have a 100-night, risk-free trial. And yeah, return it. I dare you. You won't. So if you want to take advantage of this New Year extended sale, go to helixsleep.com/BeThereIn5 for 25% off site-wide plus 2 free Dream Pillows with mattress purchase plus a free bedding with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. That's helixsleep.com/BeThereIn5 for 25% off site-wide plus 2 free Dream Pillows with mattress purchase and a free bedding bundle with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. helixsleep.com/BeThereIn5. And then according to Wayfarer's lawsuit against the New York Times, they describe what they characterize as a systematic takeover of the film by Blake Lively. And their specific allegations are that during production, Lively began exceeding her authority in several ways. First, it was wardrobe. Despite having no contractual right to control costuming, she allegedly sent hundreds of late-night images to the costume designer, forcing the team to reshop the entire wardrobe, exceeding the budget, so on and so forth. The most significant allegations concern post-production. According to Wayfarer, it disrupted Baldoni's contractual Directors Guild mandated 10-week protected period for editing. What began as a request for 2 days in the editing bay allegedly expanded to 10 days, then evolved into demanding her own exclusive editing time. They claim she ultimately fired Baldoni's editors and replaced them with her husband, Ryan Reynolds' preferred editor. She also allegedly fired the film's award-winning composer in favor of composers from Reynolds' recent project. The lawsuit claims leveraged her promotional commitments as pressure suggesting she wouldn't promote the film unless she got her way. This allegedly forced Wayfarer and Sony to pay for multiple test screenings of both Baldoni's and Lively's cuts. According to Wayfarer, even when Baldoni's cut tested significantly higher with audiences, Lively refused to honor an agreement to accept those results. Beyond creative control, they allegedly demanded and received an unearned producer credit and PGA mark, Producers Guild of America certification. The lawsuit claimed she forced Baldoni and other producers to write letters supporting her PGA certification despite not qualifying for it, with Wayfarer's team noting that they signed these letters under duress. Finally, they claim he systematically marginalized Baldoni from the film's promotion. She restricted his presence at events, removed him from marketing materials, and even initially tried to prevent him from attending the premiere. When he was allowed to attend, they claim he and his team were segregated from the main cast and forced to organize their own separate after-party. And this forms a central part of Wayfarer's defense against the PR campaign allegations. They argued their PR efforts were defensive responses to what they characterized as a hostile takeover of the project by Lively. So, I'm really unclear here on how it's a hostile takeover if he's not necessarily saying no at every step of her inserting herself into the project. And so this is what's fascinating about Baldoni's legal strategy. When you look at Wayfarer's lawsuit against the New York Times, they make these detailed claims about Blake's alleged takeover, but they don't show direct responses from Justin defending his actions. So when discussing the editing room dispute, Baldoni's position seems to be that it's not that these things didn't happen, but that they were coerced. The lawsuit states that Baldoni and Wayfarer felt compelled to acquiesce to Lively's demands about editing due to the possibility of Lively refusing to promote the film or approve any related marketing material. Okay, but so they didn't say no. They're saying duress, felt compelled to acquiesce, we felt like we had to. Similarly, regarding the premiere issues, rather than denying Lively's restrictions on his attendance, the lawsuit emphasizes how Baldoni and his team were relegated to a separate theater and required to organize and personally fund a separate after-party. The focus is on portraying these as unfair impositions rather than disputing that they occurred. And the lawsuit strategy appears to be reframing these events as evidence of Lively's alleged power grab rather than directly contesting specific incidents. And this becomes particularly interesting when we consider the texts about PR strategy. Instead of denying events, the focus was controlling how they were perceived. And the most direct denials in Wayfarer's lawsuits tend to focus on the harassment allegations rather than the creative control disputes. And this kind of suggests a legal strategy of accepting certain documented business conflicts while contesting personal conduct allegations that might be harder to prove or disprove. And the selective response pattern might help explain why Lively's team structured their federal lawsuit to focus primarily on workplace harassment, with the PR campaign and creative control issues serving as supporting evidence rather than central claims. I know I'm talking so fast, but I'm taking up way too much time. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of what I came to distill from what I was reading about this alleged creative takeover. I don't know, guys. This part, while interesting, it's kind of just like a lot of specific incidences where they felt Blake overstepped her bounds while not providing any evidence that they pushed back, said no, or made her believe that she wasn't welcome. And that's what I'm not totally understanding, and what I wonder if that's part of kind of her, being so frustrated toward the end, because what if she assumed she was like a welcome collaborator? But I think I talked to Alex about that. I understand people's response to the creative takeover. That's something I need to let marinate a bit or do more research on, is because it's what in it's the sexual harassment piece is one part, but what would entitle a person that doesn't have the rights to the film, isn't the director, and quite literally has their own defined role as an actor, an executive, producer or whatever. That's what I'm confused. Does she strong arm a lot of projects and want more control than the average person would have? Did these specific circumstances enrage her so much that this was supposed to be a movie about a woman's story who had, lived through abuse, and she was feeling gaslit on set by all of these horrible misconduct and worried he was going to retaliate, and she just felt very strongly about taking over as much as she could, so it was more from the female gaze or whatever. I don't really know, because when at face value, when you read through the account of I was systematically pushed out of my own project that I've been researching and planning for since 2019, that I bought the rights for, that I did everything for, and she was casted into, and then she coerced everyone around her, all the way up to everyone at Sony, to exclude me from press and major events and sideline me and my family and ruin our experience. And it's like that narrative is really like sad, especially if this was a passion project he like really cared about. And if a lot of this like turns out to actually be exploited or untrue, like that's really shitty. Like I understand that. I just am like, but why though? Like what would give somebody the audacity to do that? Um, and my only conjecture is like, well, if they never said no, did she think she was like running the film? And then at the very end, when they kind of um, were like not going to sign off on that, formal producer credit or whatever, like she kind of snapped. I don't know, you guys. I'm very confused. But I do think the creative takeover, I believe that. I guess I'm just wondering if it was like really hostile. And if it was hostile, was it because of her experience with them being flippant about workplace allegations and her feeling uncomfortable and wanting to take over this, story that had a bigger message? I would give her that flattering denominator, but unfortunately, she just really bombed in the sensitivity department on the tour. So I'm just not sure I can give her that favorable of an edit. I don't know, you guys. I gotta think about the creative takeover a bit more. I just don't. It's kind of interesting that they just didn't say no though, ever. But I guess they're saying that they felt that they couldn't after receiving that misconduct document. In the case she'd like use it against, I don't know. This is a fucking mess, is all I know. What a complicated story of complicated motivations. And I'm interested to see if Baldoni sues Blake directly, what it'll say. If you guys want me to cover that, I will. But I don't want to exhaust a topic, especially when it's so oversaturated. And these are some of the things I wanted to ask the attorney about. Obviously, it's incredibly important to be careful and to be constructive when talking about how, when there's any skepticism, orbiting harassment allegations, because the goal is not to doubt somebody's lived experience. The goal is to understand how strategy and timing can affect how claims are presented and how that could be used in court against somebody. And I think the timeline context is worth noting. I think the timeline context is probably something his team is paying attention to. Blake's formal complaints about harassment emerged after disputes about creative control and editing rights. So that timing doesn't invalidate her claims, but it helps us understand the broader context of the deteriorating professional relationships are able to accuse her of, exploiting that narrative in a quest for creative control just based on the timing alone. Not saying that's true or false, but, that's something with the timing coincidence that makes for he said, she said. The documentation pattern. Different types of claims have different levels of documentation. And the PR campaign allegations have extensive receipts, timelines, screenshots. Like there's a lot of text message evidence, WhatsApp. The harassment claims, though, they rely more heavily on personal testimony. So the evidentiary distinction between those two, it's not that it makes the claims less valid, but it explains why some aspects receive more immediate legal attention than others. And this is part of the issue with harassment claims, is that they're notoriously hard to provide evidence for and therefore are discredited left and right. And also something I'll talk to Alex about is legal complaints often combine multiple types of claims to establish patterns of behavior, to kind of tell a story about personal conduct allegations, and to include details alongside more documented business disputes. And my understanding is that's standard legal practice, not evidence of fabrication. Though as a commoner reading through this, I was like, is this relevant? Is this necessary? In both lawsuits. I just want to be clear. That's what I mean by skepticism. The harassment claims, not the claims themselves, but the structural and procedural elements and how they're positioned and filed. Yeah, I think that there's endless things you can talk about here with how workplace misconduct claims are interacting with their broader professional conflicts. It's not that I would blindly look at these allegations and say you can't touch them. It's that I think the better thing to do is to seek to understand how the misconduct claims are interacting with these broader professional conflicts and how structural and procedural elements really show the layers and complex dynamics at play. Not necessarily that it invalidates anyone's personal experience, but that it adds layers that people can leverage and exploit to pursue their own agenda. In theory, not that they would be doing that, but that's something that either side might claim. I think I don't know if I'm making any sense. It's just, I was trying to think through a way to explain it. the way this is done can be shady, but it doesn't mean the experiences are invalid, you know? Anyway, but that last point I made, I'm not even sure I totally believe. Like, that's kind of what I wanted to ask Alex about. Like, are these lawsuits real? I just don't feel clear on if the goal is to win or if the goal is to air grievances. And if this is like a use of the legal system to like serve as a press release. So, okay, I get excited for a 2-part series. I don't know if you guys do, but I decided, yeah, I'm going to do this in 2 parts. The next episode, I want to dig into this like world of like astroturfing, fake grassroots campaigns that create a sense of synthesized consensus where you can digitally destroy someone's reputation allegedly without a paper trail. Like, who is Jed Wallace, this shady character that like allegedly was skewing social sentiment behind the scenes? There was a guy that Baldoni's team contracted from Texas. I want to get more into like Melissa Nathan, the Melissa and Jen and Stephanie Jones and like the PR gangs lawsuit. And honestly, part of the issue was that the texts in Justin Baldoni's lawsuit to the New York Times that are like supposed to be a rebuttal for this like PR takedown campaign, they're like so hard to read. There's arrows pointing everywhere. They're like, they took out context, and the context is like, I'm going to get lunch. So I just need to like spend more time with it, because at first I was like, I feel like this is a lot of nothing, but that often proves to be my wrong instinct once I dig deeper. So the next one will be very PR focused. And I kind of want to look into, Meghan Markle hired that firm to like look into the bots that were harassing her. And it was something like, I don't know, 11% of accounts made up 70% of the online hate about her on Twitter. I mean, and I feel like we kind of glossed over that because that interview was so bombastic with Oprah and stuff. So yeah, part 2 will be PR and conversation with Alex Mack, an attorney. We already recorded part of it. I might see if she'll let me call her back, because now that I've gone through the rest of it, I feel like there are some final clarifications I want. And maybe I'll have you guys submit clarifications if you need them. Because, yeah, like I'm curious about, like, is there legitimately anything strategic about leaking the complaint, but it not being filed yet? And is there, I don't know, is it within reason to think that there's something related to discovery that would make them take that route? Like, I can't really speak to that. I'm also curious. Yeah, I think I need to dig into the third lawsuit a little bit more to really understand what it's about. And I'm curious how all of these 3 will interplay, if the investigation for one can be used on another, and just to get, her take on some of this different stuff. So it'll kind of, I guess it kind of is following it's Brittany Beth cadence of my dive, then a part 2 following up on some of the juicier parts paired with the legal convo to keep me accountable. And I know everybody ever is talking about this. It's so oversaturated, and that would usually be cause for me to avoid it. But when I feel like I'm not seeing enough of certain parts of something analyzed, then I'll dive in. And I just feel like the workplace harassment part was getting a little lost, because the PR stuff is so wild and juicy, and I think it's fascinating too, but I thought it might be good to go over this part first. And since what I learned in business school was tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them, and that's maybe why I'm being redundant, but I was trying to put together, like, just in a couple paragraphs, like, okay, here's what all of this means, like, what is Justin's team / Wayfair's central allegation, what is Blake Lively's central allegation, and this is what I think it boils down to, but I hesitate to try to even do this in a summarized manner, because I'm sure I'm missing a lot. Okay, so this is what I think the central allegations are. Wayfarer. Okay, so Wayfarer, the production company, what Justin owns, that also involves Steve, the billionaire, and Jamie, the producer. I think what this is saying that Wayfarer's central allegation is that Wayfarer and Baldoni agree that Blake Lively orchestrated a strategic takeover of their film while crafting a false narrative of victimhood. And they're contending that she used the industry strikes as leverage to make escalating creative demands, from wardrobe to final cut privileges, and ultimately pushed Baldoni out of his own project. And their lawsuit suggests that she filed a California Civil Rights Department complaint rather than a formal lawsuit to avoid scrutiny through discovery, using allegations of misconduct as cover for what they characterize as a calculated power grab. And their what they're arguing is that her motivation is stemming from like the public criticism of her tone-deaf marketing about a domestic violence film, which is now leading her to seek both creative control and a narrative that would rehabilitate her public image. And then I think Blake Lively's central allegation is that she is alleging that Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and Wayfarer Studios created a hostile work environment through sexual harassment and violations of industry protocols, particularly during intimate scenes and the filming of the birth scene. And when she attempted to address those issues through formal channels, first with HR complaints and then, or through, Wayfarer proper channels, and then through a documented protection agreement, she claims they responded with a sophisticated retaliation campaign orchestrated by their PR team, who explicitly discussed making their efforts to bury her and making them untraceable. And her lawsuit suggests that their motivation was protecting Baldoni's carefully cultivated public image as a male feminist ally, while also sending a message to others who might consider speaking up about workplace misconduct in the industry. And there you have it. I don't know if this is the right interpretation. What I'm trying to do as a, member of the general public, because I think that these lawsuits, unfortunately, I think their core motivation is to get their side of the story out to the general public. I think that it is important to bring in legal experts and people that really understand, but also kind of break it down and distill it for regulars like us. So that was my attempt at it. I'm sure I'll hear endlessly from people this week, and I will issue any corrections. I guess my point is I don't have a hot take one way or the other. I think that that's what each party's trying to do. I will always want to create a safe space for people to bring allegations forward. And while I acknowledge that there is reason for skepticism in how the claims were filed and the filings seem strategized, I can't really speak to that. Anyway, you guys, I could go on forever. I've barely slept trying to research because I got home from my winter break Thursday, and that's when I dug into Baldoni's suit, and I was like, oh God, there's no way I'm not going to be able to talk about this. And I've just basically not really slept that much because I don't have childcare on weekends, and so Greg and Errol, we're trying to figure this one out because we both have work to do. So thank you for your patience when these come out a little later. Anyway, you guys, I could go on forever. There's like a million different things I could touch on, but I feel like a zombie from reading so much legal paperwork. And I guess it's kind of fitting because I literally, you couldn't pay me to like off the cuff get it right. I've had to edit this when I accidentally say The Last of Us a million times instead of The End of Us. The Last of Us, The End of Us, This Is Us. I'm like, I'm having trouble with I'm having trouble with like movie titles and TV shows that are like all vaguely the same phrase, or that are a phrase that's like unmemorable. Kind of like how I still like, I struggle to get the name of the 1989 bonus tracks from memory. Like, Now That We Don't Talk. Is it over now? I Can See You. You know what I mean? I feel the same way about the title of Nobody Wants This. I cannot remember that TV show title because it's very adjacent to that period of time in the 90s when the rom-coms were all like, something's gotta give. As good as it gets. Whatever it takes. Definitely, maybe. I don't know. It's generic phrases that are I don't know. They're not as sticky as something more original. And all the while, The Last of Us, The End of Us, This Is Us, Us at the End, The End of Us. There's like all sorts of like shows and movies, and then I also always want to say that there's also a title to be conflated with that apocalyptic movie that was popular last year. And my sisters-in-law talked about this past weekend. I challenge you to ask somebody near you, what is the name of that Julia Roberts movie where the deer stare at you and the Teslas clog the highways? And like the cell phone towers go out and that large boat docks on the beach because it's like kind of apocalyptic. Guarantee you it takes them at least 30 seconds because it's like a full phrase that is just not easy to remember. And this is a phenomenon that I don't think we're talking about enough. Have you got it yet? It's called Leave the World Behind. I know you couldn't. It's hard. It's hard. Also, you know what I was thinking about the other day? How hard we went in college for P.S. I Love You. Topic for another day. For now, wait, is This Is Where I Leave You a name? I feel like that's the name of something that I can't place. that feels like it's whatever. Sorry. It's not a good use of time. Something hopeful or insightful, but I don't know. I just feel like I don't know if there's any winners here. I think a lot of damage has been done. I guess all I hope is that like this just doesn't become the norm. I mean, what a weird situation that it's a glimpse into a very fraught future where, we're already in the point we're at in society is like the truth is so in the eye of the beholder and in the click of a mouse and the, uh, algorithms that may look like they provide range, but actually kind of shove people down rabbit holes and make them inflexible and create this desire to confirm their deeply held beliefs that may or may not be based off of fact. Because oftentimes when you're researching takes, it's just, you developing a take based off of a bunch of other people's takes and you're not really like doing any primary research. I think we're already facing a lot with like media literacy, our definitions of the truth, where we get our information, compiled with like the fact that everyone thinks they need to have a take. I think in 2025, you guys, like, we don't always need to have a take. Let's just take the information as it comes. My take as I conclude this episode is like, I want to stare at a wall. And I'm really looking forward to covering the type of content where we're like making a deconstructed caprese salad with Meghan Markle and her Montecito home. Maybe reviving some drooping hydrangeas with a quick plunge bath. Can't wait. January 15th. Be there or be square. But yeah, I just don't know what we're looking at in the future. Like if lawsuits and, court proceedings can be used as, press releases and PR moves. And meanwhile, the court of public opinion that we would think would be a function of organic opinion is like actually being hacked from behind closed doors and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, I think that there's a lot of precedent that could come out of these legal proceedings that might dictate some reform going forward. But I don't know. It might just be like a battle of the two public images. And I just hope something productive comes out of it. All the while, it's like, I mean, it's kind of interesting too. I know a lot of people aren't calling, like a lot of people are Colleen Hoover fans, but a lot of people are very outspoken about Colleen Hoover. I'm not like very super familiar with her work and I haven't read a lot of her books. But like her and Baldoni were kind of thick as thieves because he acquired the rights in 2019, right? And for her to like completely turn on him, I think is interesting too. So I don't know. They're literally best as I could say. But I mean, I think the greatest lesson of all is, if you're going to make a mid-movie and kind of be a dick about it, beware if what you put on screen isn't as compelling as what goes on behind the scenes, because that's going to become your legacy. Who knows what we're going to find in the coming weeks and months. I'm open. We'll see how it unfolds. I'm sure I will always appropriately be there a little late to the analysis, but at least I showed up. If you have like a primary research, anything that you think would help build out the deep dive that's like constructive, for the love of God, constructive, because I could be talked out of doing a part 2 in 2 seconds if this doesn't go over well. But yeah, podcast at BeThereIn5.com. Rate and review 5 stars is the most helpful thing you could do to help our independent show. By our, I mean mine and Courtney, who works tirelessly behind the scenes to monetize it so this can be my job and I can make content for you. And you guys are the best. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I'm Kate Kennedy, and this has been a Be There in 5 Deep Dive. As always, let me know your thoughts, and I'll let you know mine. I'll be there in 5. I swear.